all I'm saying is for that amount of money and all the faff, the international bank transfers, the currency, I didn't pay enough because I got the exchange wrong. I had to send them more. All of the nonsense that I went through. Do you have any idea how difficult it is to get the translation right into a language like that? You came back alive anyway, and clearly Chinese assassins cannot be trusted. I think that's the takeaway here.
Or you don't understand who I actually work for.
Well, look, it's possible, but I haven't been assassinated either, so I don't think that's the solution here.
You are my useful idiot, sir. I thought that was obvious.
Well, you know what? My dad always said I'd be useless. So there you go. There you go, Dad. You were wrong. You were wrong. I'm useful.
Do you know what? I didn't get detained, but friend of the show, Abby Chatfield's boyfriend, sure did today.
Isn't he having a great time?
Oh,
gosh.
This is the season of FAFO, and you couldn't have asked for it better.
So you know how I used the drug and alcohol testing of Senator Shoebridge as a bit of a springboard to talk about sort of libertarian principles, anti-drug war stuff. Let's see if we can get the left to be so outraged about this detainment at the border that we can maybe get around like getting away from government control with passports and all that kind of crap. Like maybe we could like build a bit of a bridge here and start to bring people together. And actually, you know what? I've changed my mind. Screw him.
I was like, that's a little too libertarian for these people.
It's too funny. Just, I mean. Your girlfriend has called for the assassination of their president, right? This isn't political disagreement. You know, this isn't arresting dissenters. This is someone who is a high-profile individual who is quite happily in a relationship with someone who has very clearly expressed a desire for Donald Trump to be assassinated and has explicitly called for people to do it. Literally, do it. Over and over again.
Yep.
You know, I probably wouldn't I wouldn't invite that person into my home. That's for sure.
I have something to show you, but firstly, can you just double check your mic? You have got a little bit of feedback.
Feedback or
is it your internet glitching?
I have no idea.
One of us had to have a tech issue, and for once it's not me.
Okay, so it's going through the roadcaster microphone. Can anyone else hear it, or is this just Carlz J Söda hallucinating as usual? If you
I
just
will
let us know.
not have this. I have just had a week and a half behind the Great Firewall, and my patience with internet and VPNs is like paper thin.
Yeah, well, sounds like you're the one with the problem here, because we've got person after person saying that it sounds good. My dulcet tones. So yeah, I think hey everybody, confirmation. Thank you for finally settling this one. Carly, you're the one with the problems.
I mean, we knew that. That's not new information.
Yeah.
But I am back from the land of the dragon. I am back from China, and as you can see, I'm fine. I'm in good health.
You're in one piece. You are in one piece. It is quite remarkable. Your studio is working. All of our tech worked. I plugged in my laptop this morning, booted up my broadcaster video. They decided to play nice with each other. My laptop has not moved all day. I have not even shifted its position on the desk. I'm like, I have an Oddcast tonight. I need these two bits of equipment to keep playing nice with each other. Just nobody move. And sure enough, here we are. Everything's
That's
working.
how I feel. Everything is, I'm just like not touching anything. Everything seems to be working. Everything seems to be fine. And here we are.
Now, did you want to go any deeper than that into this whole detainment on the border, or are we just sort of enjoying the delicious irony and moving on?
I think it's worth discussing for a couple of reasons. I mean, you know that there's going to be a meltdown ensuing, right? And like with Abby, actually, I'm just pulling up something because you know I'm not going to not play a reel tonight. I've actually got a couple in the bank, but
look, listen, I learned from last time. Ladies and gentlemen, hang on. No. I'm done. I'm saying I'm not that one. What do I need? I need this one. I'm done getting caught short. So
you've got back up.
I'm not running out. I bought these because I was hoping that people would come back to mine for cigars after the election after party, and we ended up having cigars out the back of the venue anyway. So these went undrunk. They're still brand new in box. No, you can't have them. They will be put to good use in due course in my house, but they are on standby for tonight in case you show too many reels.
Well, to be fair, I only have one for now. So like, relax. Not to say that I won't bring up more later, but a couple of things around this. So I know we've talked about Abby before. It's part of the drinking game, guys. And Jen specifically requested in the Discord tonight, I give her some drinking words. So Jen, Masters, Abby, Venezuela, that should get you started. But again, people wonder why I bring up Chatfield a lot. And the reason is she has significant influence on the younger women, particularly with the way that they participate in political discussions, the what do you call it? The protests and so on and so forth. And you guys might not like her. You might not think she's worth the time, but unfortunately she is quite influential. So much so that Kiss FM in Sydney replaced Kyle Sandilands with Abby Chatfield for 2 weeks, right? Like, we're not talking about someone small that you can cast aside and say isn't somewhat influential. Like her or not, yeah. She is. So she was on air. She was on a breakfast radio show after having done all the things that we've talked about, the biggest one being calling for some incel to assassinate Donald Trump.
You might get laid if you do it.
Sorry?
You might get laid if you do it.
Yeah. And I'm not going to replay the video. You guys have probably seen it 100 times now. I think everyone's bringing that video back up. But look, I will say this. It's my belief, and this is honestly just my opinion. So, I'm not diagnosing here. I do think Abby is a class A narcissist because there's a pattern to her behavior, right? And that is she always has some kind of meltdown. Remember we talked about the Clem Ford meltdown where she's like, please stop bullying me. And she's crying, hysterical. But in the same breath, she'll turn around and say that anyone who is marching for Australia should just die and not procreate, right? Yeah. And then in the next breath, she'll be like, come to my live show, buy tickets to this, come support my boyfriend's show. And so she had a meltdown last week over the media covering her not getting a full-time position at A&R, right? So she did the Kiss FM. It was only meant to be a guest spot. And the media were like, nope, she's got no future as like a permanent replacement for Kyle and Jackie O. And there was it's like a media-specific industry paper did a piece on her. And Abby responded to it, as she always does, with a full-blown meltdown, right? This is what she does. This is the Abby Chatfield playbook, right? So she has this ridiculous reaction where she's sobbing and she's like, I don't want to cry because I don't want them to give him another opportunity to take bad photos of me or screenshots of me. But
she's the one putting it online.
Yeah, she's like, you have won. You've won. Are you happy? Right? Like it's petulant, juvenile, teenage reaction. And I kid you not, 24 hours later, Abby releases a live show and she's selling tickets to a live show. If you're telling me that is not calculated, that's not deliberate, I've got a bridge to sell you. So as to be expected, Carlz J Söda could not hold back. And
no.
In my reels, I'm normally not overly personal, but this one, it just hit a chord. And I was in China and I was like, fuck you. So we're going to listen. All right, guys.
Hang on. Before you do that, there was a question in here. I just want to, firstly, this is the comment of the night so far. Yes, that was a long intro to your reel there, Carly. But there was a great question here. Someone said that they can't legally drink alcohol. Here it is. What's a good substitute? Well, I would suggest if we're watching Carly's reels, probably magic mushrooms or a line of Coke. That's probably going to be the best way to get through the next few minutes. That's all I'm going to say.
Look, guys, I am a libertarian. I don't particularly partake myself, but you do you. You do you. I don't judge over here. But anyway, I like my calories where I can see them in a dessert. So
fair enough.
All right. Without further ado, here we go. You guys can see that. Oh God, I'm doing the thing where I have to look at my screen. So just bear with me for a second, guys.
You're frozen.
All right, hang on. Let me close that. And 3, 2, 1. Let's go.
That you have won.
Nope.
So you can stop now. You've won.
Honestly, Abby, it is time to finally shut up and listen. The universe is trying to deliver you a lesson and you keep refusing to learn it. Your crocodile tears are utter performative bullshit and no one is falling for it except for all your sycophantic fans. I've been in your shoes, Abby. I've been tarred and feathered by the Australian public and dragged through the mud by the Australian media. I know exactly what it feels like to be bullied, harassed, and pushed to near suicide because you had contrarian beliefs, and women like you and Clementine Ford made a spectator sport of it. Women like you and Clementine Ford cheered on the bullying and harassment and takedown of women who didn't align with your political beliefs. The Australian media certainly does reserve a special level of malevolence towards women, particularly contrarian women like myself. But women like you, Abby, got a free pass because you aligned with the woke progressive ideology being shoved down our throat. Let's not forget, Abby, only months ago you were inciting political violence by trying to get an incel to Donald Trump because you don't like his politics, even though he was a duly elected president of the United States. And not only did you go unpunished, you got put into a position on a primetime breakfast radio show. How much money did you make during COVID, Abby, when you were forcing everyone to take the vaccine and you were plugging your butt plugs? Did you ever consider the impact of your behaviors and the mental health of the people that you sent your followers after to go and troll and harass? How have you still not learned after 2 defamation cases that you can't just make up shit about people and send your followers after them? You asked for this fame. You want this platform. With it goes a lot of responsibility. And if you can't hold the weight of fame, maybe it's time to step out of the spotlight. I am so done with women like you calling foul because finally you are being held responsible for your egregious behavior. For years, you have been running around calling anyone who disagrees with you in any capacity racists, Nazis, bigots, conspiracy theorists, cookers, just because they dared to have an opposing opinion to you. And now all of a sudden, like all of us predicted, that pendulum is swinging back hard and your woke ideology is no longer the flavor of the month, which means you are no longer going without consequence. And to be really clear, this is not bullying or harassment. This is pointing out double standards and your hypocrisy. Learn the lesson, Abby, otherwise the universe will keep delivering the lesson and making it harder each time until you do. I don't wish you any harm, Abby, but I will demand you have some accountability for your actions. There you go.
There you go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, don't piss off Carlz. She'll do a reel about you, and then everyone else will have to get their stomach pumped. It's
no. Do you know what? It's so interesting that reel. I think it's over a 500,000 views already, and I think I said what a lot of people in professional media wish they could say, right? Like,
yeah, but they can't. They're tethered.
Yeah, they're tethered, right? And Abby came after Sam Frost. You guys will remember that during COVID. She came after Brittany Hockley, who I was on the Life Uncut podcast last year. She's gone after heaps of people, but most recently, she just lost a second defamation lawsuit, right? So the first one went to court and she was found liable of defamation and had to pay $70,000 in settlement to Keli, sorry. I think that was a high school friend of hers, plus
That's right.
plus
Yeah.
Right? And then most recently, Harrison Boone, who, guys, I'm not very big on reality TV, but Harrison Boone, I think, was on Maths, Married at First Sight or something like that. And Abby did the same thing, as she always does, called him a racist, says he's okay with the slaughter of children and genocide, like horrible, egregious things that someone with a platform of almost 1 million combined shouldn't be saying, let alone someone with media training, right? Like, you can't do these things, but Abby and now her boyfriend, because they're emboldened by this progressive ideology, they think they're untouchable. And to be fair, during COVID and post-COVID, in that sort of like dystopian woke era, they were untouchable, right? Which is how they've amassed this following. It's all very performative.
This is where, though, the bitter clingers come in, because you've got this, the world is now changing rapidly. We've talked ad nauseum about that. I'm not going to go through it with you again now. But the world is changing. A lot of what was protected only 2 years ago is now vulnerable to criticism. We can now talk about things that we couldn't 2 years ago. And a lot of the things that won you applause 2 years ago now get you jeers and mockery, because the people that poke fun at you are no longer being silenced. So it's not that what we're thinking has changed, but what's socially acceptable to express has shifted really quickly. Now, some people are bandwagoning. They're getting away from their old positions. And we see this, it's most obvious in the corporate world. Corporates are no longer putting up rainbow flags during Pride Month and doing, all the virtue signaling. Many companies are now, not a majority yet, but an increasing number of companies are openly rejecting DEI, diversity, equity, inclusivity. They're openly rejecting, what was the other big one that BlackRock required? ESG. Environmentally sustainable governance, or whatever it is. Anyway. A lot of that's now being rejected in favor of just doing what's best for shareholders, which is what they should have done all along. Now, the corporates, it's obvious because it was out there as part of their advertising, etc. What's happening privately is a little bit less obvious, but people's pronouns are disappearing from their LinkedIn bios and, from their email handles and these sorts of things, and people are slowly backing away. But that's not everybody. Some people went all in on this. Some people built their brands on this. Some people cashed in on this, and they can't get out. They're actually, their flag is nailed to this mast, and they are going to go down with this ship. But as they do, they're going to get more and more bitter and more strident as time goes on. The world has turned against me. See, this is proof that I was right all along. It's a patriarchy and I'm a victim and all of those things. And they will literally become the next generation of bitter clingers. Instead of clinging to God and guns, they're going to be clinging to pronouns and rainbow flags. And that's literally how someone like an Abby Chatfield, that's her future. Unless she has a come to Jesus moment at some point, her destiny is to grow old as one of those bitter clingers.
What I find sort of heartwarming to a degree is, like you said, a lot of these media types are tethered. And I think there's a lot more conservative people in the media than we recognize, but they don't feel like they can express that. It will cost them a job. And we know that. And you and I have different views on that. We don't think that should be an excuse. But, I have noticed my following has grown substantially, and that's not a flex. It's more who has started following me. A lot of media types, a lot of journalists, that's a lot of
flex.
People.
You wanted to flex, but not on pure numbers. You wanted to flex on quality, not quantity. Yeah.
Well, I just hit 80K this morning, I think, and I started this 6 months ago at 35 or something. So, I think that shows
when you buy them in bulk like that, you get them at half price. So it really works out well.
Well, you know what? I just messaged Jacinta Allen, and she gave me a dealer. That's how you do it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. See, you play both sides.
Are we still talking about social media here?
Bit of both. I'm getting some of that sweet CFMEU kickback as well.
Nice.
I mean, because apparently I take money from everyone. We'll talk about that in a second, but apparently I'm taking CCP money now too. So guys, I'm just like, but yeah, so back on this, and the reason I brought up the followers thing is I think there is room for this genuine conversation now, but the issue is when you're too far on the extremes and people are explosively worked up, that's not a conducive discussion. No one's having any good discussions with that or debates. I think what you need is to be able to have a bit more nuanced discussions and go, look, we disagree, but I think you're a good person. I think your heart's in the right place. What can we get along on with this? And I definitely think the media are picking up on this. We're going to talk about this story, but Anthony Albanese trying to defend Annika Wells and the media's responses. What I guess I want you guys to sort of pick up on is you can see the media's changing. We saw this also towards the end of the lockdown with a lot of the journalists who were fed up with lockdown and they were holding Dan Andrews' tail to the fire. We're seeing that definitely with Albo, definitely with Jim Chalmers. And I think people know things are rotten. And we're also seeing that with the discussion around One Nation, which we will get to. But I just want to finish on this Adam Hyde story. So this is what's happened today for anyone who doesn't know. So Keli Holiday, that's his stage name. His real name is Adam Hyde. He's one half of Peking Duck. Essentially, Keli Holiday he actually got into the US and then he went across to Toronto and he tried to get back and he got detained at the Canadian-USA border. He can't cross in. Now, apparently he was detained all day. And as anyone who's been detained, I know quite a few people, Arby, Sydney Watson, I know a few people now who haven't been able to get into the US. So it says here that he's had to cancel his shows and things like that. Now, why this matters is last week in Abby's video where she was crying and hysterical, she was saying this is affecting my income, right? This is important. This is affecting my income. Guys, do you not remember a certain video I put up during COVID and half of Australia was like, fuck your income, fuck you, you grandma killer?
Don't remember it at all.
Nah, I wouldn't remember. I mean, what's 40 million views?
Pixar, it didn't happen.
Right. And so this is
play us the reel. Play us another reel. I dare you. My liver can take it.
No, you know what? I deleted it. I don't even have that anymore. I'm sure it's on the internet somewhere, but I don't even have it. But this matters because all of a sudden, the consequences that we all had to face because of people like Clementine Ford, Abby Chatfield, and all the woke people who are embracing cancel culture, now it's happening to them. And boy, do they not like it. They don't like it at all. So, look, I don't know how many shows he had in America. To be honest, I haven't really looked at this article. I couldn't care less. But I do find it funny that there's a bit of accountability. So this is the story he put up on his Instagram. He calls people stunners. Okay, try less hard, right? Like just back off a little, bro. You're overcommitted to the point where you look like a caricature of yourself. I get the rock star thing, but you're overcooking it, right? Basically, he said, I've spent all day detained at the Canadian border and denied entry back into the US despite having the proper visa documentation. Well, you know what, Adam? I know, how do I say this? I've got to use simpler language because kindergarten. This president, bad. Make USA grumpy. Don't do this to president of country you want to go in. Naughty, make Trump mad. Did that help?
It was probably about twice as long as it needs to be. Their attention span probably won't hold. But I mean, look, we'll see how we go. If it comes to it, I'll get my marbles out, okay? And then we'll clear everything up. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's interesting. So the other thing too is the price of fame. I said that in my reel, right? Like if you can't handle the weight of fame and the responsibility that comes with it. And I know this because I talked to someone. I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus, but this person's a media veteran. You'd all know who this person is. And she messaged me privately and she's like, please keep going. Like you are saying everything we wish we could say. You're right. And I was getting a lot of hate from the Abby Chatfield fans for that reel, right? A lot of hate. But do you know what the hate was? Who even are you? Abby has 5 times the followers of you. I'm like, oh, no, not the followers, shame. How will I recover?
Oh, no.
My poor ego.
All right. We can't spend the whole show talking about Abby. We do need to.
I just want to finish this.
All right.
These are people that I think were cherry picked by the people who wanted to install ESG DEI. I think Abby Chatfield played that role. I think she was put up for this kind of position and emboldened by the media. And now we are seeing what happens when the public openly reject it. And that's what I think is happening now, particularly with One Nation. We'll talk about the ABC in a sec. This is not a left wing versus right wing, progressives versus conservatives. This is a objectively like real versus dystopian gaslit fakery. That's what this is. It's a rejection of that. And Abby, I think, and her partner are kind of like the golden child of that whole ideology, you know?
Yeah, and it's that unearned fame thing where they got a hand up. They didn't have to actually fight. Now they probably had to fight somewhat, but they didn't have to actually fight genuinely as hard as what it takes to get there. Someone kind of went, "Oh, I'll get you up here," and as a result, they didn't build those muscles. They didn't get that strength. We've talked about that before. We're going to get to the election, but before we do, thank you.
Can we talk about China quickly? Because I have the funny thing to show you.
All right. Let's talk about China.
All right. First. It is another reel, but it's not what you think. All right. I told you.
Jen asked, not enough?
Jen asked that I get her drunk. Jen, I'm just doing what you said. I didn't say I'd do it responsibly. I didn't say I'd go in easy. I'm just going in.
I was phrasing, please. I was going to save this until we started talking about the election, but I can't wait that long. You're wrapping up.
All right, you ready?
Yeah.
This sums up China. Are you ready? All right, let me play this for you.
I saw this one. All right, we're going to get a copyright strike if we keep going. You're trying to get a copyright strike, are you?
No, I stopped it within 8 seconds. That's the rule.
Is that the limit? Is it? Okay.
8 seconds.
I got a copyright strike for the coverage of the One Nation after party. Anyway, yeah, these things are cool. How much does it weigh empty though? That's my things. Like batteries aren't light.
So there's a whole range of them, right? Like you got fancy ones down to the straight cheap ones. That one that I was riding was like the top model, like the most expensive, lasts long. That thing, the battery will last 15 kilometers, like lengthwise, right? And
that's insane.
Do you know why you need these? Because Chinese airports are huge. They are huge. So I went to Guangzhou. That's what I flew into. And then I flew up to Chongqing. And that airport, like I was looking at, I've got like an Aura ring, right? I was doing 25,000 steps a day just trying to get to the bloody airport, to the hotel, just moving around. I see why they have them. They make so much sense. I mean, I'm hardly going to like cruise around Melbourne airport. I'd feel like such a dick. But
China's looking at it going, the one area where America are still beating us is in obesity. The problem is our people are walking too much. Let's invent electric scooters. Old people don't ride scooters of any kind. Let's invent electric luggage.
Yeah. Oh, like, God, it was fun. And they actually go a little too fast. I will say that. Like
that looked pretty quick.
Yeah. Like I slowed down as I was going around the corner. I was like, oh my God, I'm good.
All right.
But yeah.
We've got a couple of super chats to get through. So Pro Engineer, why so late? This was posted before we started, 4 minutes before we started. Screw you, Pro Engineer. I say that with love. This is the one I put up earlier. Women's planning takes forever. Yes, well played, sir.
Give you the context. You can't just have the end without all the in between.
So, Topher, do you think you agree more or less with Pauline after the last few days being libertarian? One Nation are definitely not a libertarian party. Let me be clear about that. But also, they're nowhere near as authoritarian and therefore nowhere near as conservative, because conservatism and authoritarianism are actually intrinsically tied together. They're nowhere near as authoritarian as the media makes out their policies to be. I'll give you an example. She's about to announce a tax on our oil and gas, or on our gas particularly, I think, basically being bullied into it. And I think that's a terrible idea for reasons that I will go into a little bit later when I drop one of my 3 secrets that I have for you, Carly. But they're not trying to retrospectively apply it to existing deals. They're saying we're going to change the rules for future deals going forward. The Greens and others want to change the deal. They want to change it for the deals that we've already done. And so, they're definitely not a libertarian party, but they're also not an authoritarian conservative party. And many of their instincts, when they face a problem, many of their instincts are to get the government out. There's only a handful of areas where their instinct is to say, well, we need the government to come in and do more to fix this problem. And those tend to be the areas where I very, very strongly disagree with them. So I spent more time with Pauline over the last few days than I've spent with her ever before. I would say that my opinion of her at a personal level was already quite high, but has been further reinforced by that exposure and by that time. I like her as a human being. I think she'd be someone you'd be really happy to have in your family. You'd be really happy to have her as a mum or a grandmum. And the love for her. I put up my interview with her. Sorry about the audio for today's interview with Pauline, everyone on my channel. I had a piece of equipment fail and my editor actually did really well just getting it up to that standard where you heard it. That was actually an achievement given how bad it was to start with. So sorry about that, but just watching her interacting with people, she is still the fish and chip shop owner. And I say that in the best possible way. She hasn't lost touch with reality and with real ordinary people. So do I like her more than ever? Yes. Do I agree more or less with her? I think I've come to understand that her approach is less authoritarian than what I feared it might have been, which is a good thing, but I'm still a libertarian and she is still a conservative. And so there are some pretty big differences between us. Now, I want to get to something really important here. Hang on. Oh dear. No, it reset. No. Here we go. Okay. No. Here we go. Firstly, thank you for your comment regarding the Rebel mic, and thank you to Rebel News for having me be their live reporter in the room for the coverage of the Farrah by-election. It was a lot of fun, and my voice, if you can't tell, is still recovering.
Can I do something which pains me. This pains me. This pains me more than the probe that China gave me, trying to get in their country.
You enjoyed that, let's be honest.
Maybe I did. My boyfriend has asked me to read you a message, and I fear it might be complimentary to you. So
A message from Carly's boyfriend. I'm worried.
we've traded sides. All right. Straight from the words mouth of G-Man. Firstly, thank you for covering the Farrah after party. The energy from that room was really inspiring and gave me a little sense of hope for Australia. I concur. Topher, the way you handled and covered that event was on the ground for Rebel was amazing. 10 out of 10 energy and asked some really great questions. Really well done, mate. How much did you pay G for this?
Listen,
what's his going rate?
You don't understand how cheap your boyfriend really is.
A slab of beer, he'd be anyone's. Rukshan ran the show really well and handled it amazingly, even without Abby. Well done to him on that. It was a really great stream. So there you go, from G-Man.
So my question for you is, how drunk was he at the time?
$5. He wrote it as he was pouring a glass of red whilst I was cooking dinner before. So,
well, I mean, if the red wasn't empty, if the bottle of red wasn't empty, then he can't have been that bad. Ladies and gentlemen, I think I'm going to have to open one of these bottles to celebrate. Carly just said something nice about me. It's I think
I didn't say it. I just read out the message.
I didn't. You're right. You're right. Better put this away. I didn't mean to cast dispersions on your character there, Carly.
I will say I literally landed at 7 p.m. on Saturday and finally got the internet. Guys, we'll talk about that later, but the Great Firewall works very well, even with a VPN. You're constantly dropping in and out. It's so annoying, particularly when you're trying to use a map and like a Google Translate app. Anyway, and I landed, I finally got notifications and I looked at they were just starting to count. I think I was literally still sitting on the tarmac. And I started the Rebel News coverage that you had, and I was just listening to it. And this sounds crazy. Just hear me out. I travel a lot, and I have traveled a lot. And I used to always have this like euphoric feeling of once I landed at Melbourne Airport, driving over the Balti Bridge, and just being like, home, right? Like this inertia and this like I don't know, just happiness to finally be like, right. And I haven't had that.
I know what you mean.
Since 2019. I haven't felt like that. Anyway.
Yeah.
I was listening to that podcast or the live show, and for the first time, I was like, "Oh my god, I feel like we might still have a chance." You know what I mean? So there you go.
Yeah, this fight ain't over. So, however, I just want to correct someone here. Dilemmas 85 said, "I followed Topher when he was fat, OG Oddie." Well, look, yes, that makes you an OG Oddie, but if you want to be an OG Topher, you have to have started following me when I was this skinny.
They're 30.4% full and falling as I speak. I remember in the 80s and 90s, we used to do reckless things with water, crazy things like watering gardens, keeping lawns, washing cars. And on hot days, we used to play in sprinklers and inflatable.
How old are you there?
They were good days. But they.
That's 2009. So I'm going to say I was 27.
You little whippersnapper. What a dog.
The girls were chasing me, or at least they were running. They were running in the other direction, but I choose to believe that was chasing. That's so if you're an OG if you watched that video before 2010. That's proper OG Topher right there. Gee, man.
It's funny. I'm just reading some of the comments. Oh dear. Good work. Topher, you did tapeworm. Do you know that was a diet in the 1800s for women, swallowing a tapeworm? I mean, it eventually killed them, but yeah, it's true story.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So do you want to get to Farrah since I keep derailing the conversation?
Look, we need to, because I've lit the cigar now. So, we gotta so I'm celebrating. What are we celebrating? Well, what I'm celebrating is that we're gonna get really nerdy and really down into a couple of details here, because
So this
actually
is the final count. This is done. It's all done.
this is done. So there will still be a few postals coming in, but every single vote that has arrived has been counted, and the number of outstanding postals yet to dribble in will be negligible. So I don't expect that these results will change in any meaningful way whatsoever. There might be a few hundred more votes out there. Now, there's a couple of things I want to comment about here right off the bat. I said at the start of the coverage on Saturday that it was possible for actually both Michelle Milthorpe and David Farley, One Nation, to both claim a form of victory. For One Nation, victory would have to mean actually winning the seat. It would have to be the actual victory. But if Michelle Milthorpe had closed the gap, had made ground on where she was against Susan Ley 1 year ago, then she would still be able to claim kind of a form of victory and be able to say, well, you know, we didn't win, but we've made ground and we're closer than we were before, etc. Well, thing is, 1 year ago, that's her against Susan Ley, 56% she went down to. This is her now, 57.5% she went down. So she actually lost ground, even though it was One Nation that took the win and not the Liberal Party. She actually lost ground. So that I think it's a little bit wonkish, and you've got to be in the details to care. But when you understand the implications of that, that really underscores just how massive this win was. One Nation just won a seat that has never been won by anyone other than Liberal and Nationals. It's never been won by Labor. It's only ever been held by Liberals and Nationals in 77 years since it was created. And One Nation just took it with a higher margin than what the incumbent Liberal Party member, who was a senior long-serving Liberal Party member, was able to secure only 1 year ago. So that's kind of my first point there. And that's like, maybe this is just me because I've been in the weeds for too long, but the weight of that, the gravity of that is going to have a lot of people lying awake at night, literally unable to sleep, literally brain ticking over. The next thing that's going to have them very, very worried is this little map here. It's a lot of orange. Can you see anything other than orange?
The teal down the bottom.
Yeah. Guess where that is?
Right in the city centre?
Well, that's Albury. And it's specifically the city centre of Albury. It is the absolute most urban areas. Literally 6 polling booths that she won. Every polling booth that has Albury in its name, Michelle Milthorpe won to varying degrees. Some of them not by much, but some of them by quite a lot. Then as you move away from the absolute dead centre of Albury, the numbers start to change very quickly. She did win some other booths, and you've got sort of a suburban ring. It's a little bit like a micro Melbourne. You've got the high rise, which isn't very high, but you've got the main street in the very, very heart, which is very, very green and sort of politically Greens inclined. And then you've got the suburbs around that. This is your blue collars, but it's also your welfare dependent people and your communities that are going to vote for Labor or vote left because they want more free stuff. Then you get out into your sort of hardworking areas. But what has to be noted is that there's a couple of larger towns in the electorate. There's places like Corowa, there's places like Griffith, and there's other places as well that also have their own artsy-fartsy community, their own left-leaning kind of areas. They didn't manage to sway any of those as a region, and they swayed a few of them as individual polling booths. There's a couple of I've actually got the full list of them here, but I don't, it's probably too much detail to go into. But outside of Albury and the suburbs around Albury, I think Michelle Milthorpe claimed maybe 3 or 4 polling booths out of, I don't know, 100 or so of these things, or probably not 100, probably 70 or so of these things. So this was an absolute thumping outside of those very, very specific inner urban areas. Why does that matter? Well, it matters, number one, because this is happening all over the country. This is not just Farrah. This is happening all over the country. Yeah, okay, maybe once you get into Wagga, maybe it won't go One Nation, but everything around Wagga and all the country around Wagga will probably go One Nation. The same can be said for Tamworth. The same can be said for all of these regional centres throughout the country. The area around is going to be orange. Here's why that really matters. Because within that orange map is one federal seat, but there are multiple New South Wales state seats contained within that area.
Yeah.
And they are going to enjoy an overwhelming One Nation win when the state election comes along, because they don't have Albury inside their state seat. Whoever runs in Albury is going to have a fight on their hands. Whoever runs for the New South Wales state election in these other areas that are now painted solid orange but don't include Albury, Well, they're going to have a much, much easier time of it. So what we're seeing here, the Farrah by-election has given us the ability to actually note and to begin to say, okay, what's likely to happen, at least in this region of the New South Wales election. And by the way, that white area down the bottom, that's Victoria right there. And I can tell you right now, there's an awful lot of people in Victoria that are planning to do the same thing as what the voters of Farrah just did. Ricky Lee Tyrrell, who's a not long-standing, but she's been a One Nation MP now for a number of years, the only Victorian state One Nation MP, as far as I'm aware. She came along to the after party. I caught up with her. I've known her for years, since before she ran. And the feeling's the same. This is happening on both sides of the river, but it's also happening throughout New South Wales, into Queensland, possibly parts of South Australia as well, although that's a little bit harder to be sure. The overwhelming nature of this win, increased majority. The Greens, by the way, okay, so the Greens last election, 2025, they got 5% of the vote themselves. Then Labor got 15% of the vote. This time, Labor weren't running, and so you would think some of them would go to the Greens, right? There's no Labor candidate, so some of those Labor voters, they'll vote number one for the Greens. Last election, they were 5%. Guess what they were this election?
Like 2% or something, wasn't it? It was really low.
Less than 2.5%.
Yeah.
So their vote went down, even though there was no Labor candidate. Now, Michelle Milthorpe's primary vote went up by 8 percentage points. That still leaves 7 percentage points worth of Labor voters unaccounted for. Where did they go? Well, not all of them, but some of them went to One Nation. There can be no doubt about that. There can be no doubt about that at all. I could go deep into the details here, but I don't want to bore everybody to death. I kind of don't know where to go from here. Do I go further in, or do we call that quits?
No, I reckon there's a couple of things to talk about. So we'll stay on this One Nation thing. I'm just going to pull up the ABC reaction to this, because there's a lot here that I think we really need to unpack. So I've got it here. Let me add this to the stage. So this is, again, our national broadcaster, right? This is taxpayer funded, and this is their reaction. Let's just watch the video and then we can say our piece. So
a big and dangerous mistake to legitimise One Nation and to embolden One Nation. Here we've had Angus Taylor make a deliberate decision to preference One Nation above the Independent, which tonight could really be one of the reasons they get across the line. We'll see as the votes come through, but that will be key. And that will legitimise them, and I used the term earlier on in the broadcast, the permission structure. If they are able to win their first lower house seat, that begins the process of legitimising them. And in other electorates where they may run, voters thinking, well, it's happened before, it's normal now. You start normalising something, and in fact, a big and dangerous mistake to...
So she's a little bit worried about this thing called democracy. She's so worried about democracy that she needs to remove democracy so that we can save democracy, guys. Because in case it wasn't clear what she was suggesting, that by One Nation winning a lower house seat, that's now giving Australians the permission structure to go out and participate in democratic elections where you can actually choose who you'd like to represent you in Parliament. And that would be terrible, because it would be legitimizing the party that you would like. Like, what an absolutely outrageous thing to come from our public broadcaster. I cannot believe she was allowed to say that on air, and she hasn't faced some kind of like, disciplinary action for just being
she can
so...
say what she wants. The other hosts should have pushed back. Here's the thing. She's saying that the leader of the party that just got 12% is legitimizing the party that just got nearly 40% by doing a preference deal with them. No, colluding to reject a party that represents the will of 2 out of every 5 members, the direct first preference will of 2 out of every 5, and the overall two-party preferred will of 3 out of every 5 voters in this electorate, giving them their due is somehow giving them a permission structure. I mean, that level, it's actually the entitlement in that statement that pisses me off. The presumption that she gets to decide and define what people should have permission for and what we should be legitimizing, rather than actually the voters get to decide. By definition, the voters decide what's legitimate, what's not, what's beyond the pale and what's not. And the voters have said the time for One Nation has come.
Correct. And it's funny because I've seen that you've been responding to Peter Fitz a lot on X, right? And Cos Samaras was just recently, we've talked about Cos before, he was just recently on Mark Boros's podcast. And the issue, like Cos is very good at calling Labor strategy, right? Like obviously Cos is a Labor guy.
He's a Labor guy. Yep.
But Cos can be quite right when he's talking about his side of the fence, but he's always wrong.
I'd go further. I think he's one of the best when it comes to his side of the fence. I listen to him and I pay attention to what he's got to say when he's telling me what's going on the left of Australian politics. Absolutely.
100%. He absolutely understands his side. But every time I hear him talk about the opposition, not just Liberal, but One Nation or the, he called it the, what was the word he called it? The, God, what did he say? It was like a protest vote, right? That's what he was calling One Nation. It was a blip. It was a protest vote. I said this in the opening of this show. This is not about left wing versus right wing. They keep trying to paint it as like left versus right. This is not that anymore. This is objective reality versus this dystopian breakdown of basic human reality. And whether it's the ESG, the DEI, all of the colonizer, white people bad, men can get pregnant, there's 1,000 genders, all of this stuff all at once. People are rejecting it. Now, people towed the line during the pandemic and they got on with it, they did the pronouns as you said. But it comes to a point when people can see that their children are going to school and there's a cat in the classroom and the teacher's indulging it. Or their 14-year-olds are out breaking into homes and stealing cars and they keep getting put out on bail, or, their house is being robbed, and all of these different things. I talked about this about a year ago on this podcast. I said, all of these little spot fires will eventually get to a point where that fire is massive in someone's backyard. And this is why this is no longer, it's not a protest vote. It's not like oh, you know what, we'll try the other side because you've had your chance. No. People are going, enough with this bullshit. Jacinta Allen getting up there and gaslighting us. Anthony Albanese getting up there and gaslighting us. Jim Chalmers gaslighting us. And to a degree, the Liberals do it too. Now, I often get accused of being like this right-wing stooge or this Liberal stooge. I don't talk about Liberals very often because they're basically non-existent. They're irrelevant to the conversation most of the time. I'll talk about them when they actually do something worth talking about. But, when it comes to Labor, and we'll talk about this shortly, but whether it's Jacinta Allen with the CFMEU stuff, or now we've got Annika Wells. We talked about that a few months ago. She's been accused of overusing taxpayer funds to fund her trip for her families and herself. And she's been found guilty of using government funds to fund her own private holidays. She's had to pay $10,000 back. But these people will say, that's okay. That's fine. She's allowed to do that. It's within the spirit of the rules. That's their favorite line. It's within the spirit of the rules. Jacinta Allen taking $300,000 to fund her second home in Melbourne. That's okay. She's only the highest paid premier in the country. She's on over $500,000. But guys, you just don't understand.
What kind of a second home are you paying $300,000 a year for? Like that's.
I'd love to know what are the costs.
I have questions.
Yeah, what are these ongoing costs? Are we paying your mortgage, Jacinta? Are we paying your rates? Are we paying for your furniture? Are we paying for it to be remodeled? Did you put a new kitchen in? Like, I'm trying to think how you spend $300,000 that quickly.
I want to come back to costs. So this is the John Curtin Research Centre talking about costs on one of their podcasts. They've summarised his view as chasing Pauline Hanson could cost the Liberals the voters they should naturally own. That's apparently Cos Samaras' brutal warning for the coalition post-Farrah. What he's completely missing is that it was the Liberals chasing Labor that vacated this part of the political spectrum and made it wide open for One Nation. There was this belief that One Nation would be on the pale. And by the way, I actually bought into that. I've been in favour of One Nation for quite some time, ever since I spent a couple of days on a plane with Senator Roberts years ago. But I said only, a year and a half ago, I think my exact phrase was, everyone that's going to vote for One Nation has already voted for One Nation. I was making the argument that they had peaked. And quite clearly, that particular prediction has aged like fine milk. So a lot of people thought, myself included, a lot of people thought the Liberals are safe lurching to the left because where else are people going to go? And clearly that is the thought that continued to infect the Liberals right up until the One Nation Party did what even I didn't think was possible, and they've entered and they've occupied that space that the Liberals have vacated. So Carlz Samaras saying, oh, chasing Pauline Hanson could cost the Liberals the voters they should naturally own. No. They've abandoned the voters they should naturally own. Pauline Hanson is now being supported by the voters that the Liberal Party should naturally own if they'd held to the values of Menzies and his We Believe opening statement and his belief statement for the party. So this idea that we're going to take advice from a left-wing pollster, this is advice that is good for the Labor Party, not advice that's good for the Liberal Party. But I want to come across to this comment here because this really cuts to the chase and the heart of what's going on. Insert funny handle says, the more these ABC lefty muppets sook about this and act like they're so much smarter and more superior, more people will move to parties like One Nation out of spite. One moment, I need to breathe and...
Sorry, guys. Topher's going to have...
Yeah, cigar breathe break. Now, here's the thing. One Nation voters are being derided as being stupid. I've literally got comments I could put up on screen right now all over social media. It's stupid people, it's racist people, it's bigoted people, it's low information people, what have you. The fact is, actually, what's happening is this decision to abandon the majors, and we watched the majors get abandoned big time. The combined vote for the Liberal and National parties was 22%. 22% for the parties that have owned this seat for 75 years, right? So people are changing. Rusted on Nationals voters, rusted on Liberals voters have disconnected for the first time. They're not doing that at an intellectual level. They're actually doing it at a moral level. What they're saying is, I'm done being lied to. I'm done being let down. I'm done being the patsy for your political games. I'm done upholding your political ambitions when you do absolutely nothing for me in return. The decision that's being made is not being made at a policy level. It's not even being made at a personal level. Do I like this candidate or do I not like this candidate? It's being made at a moral level. People have come to realize what we've done for the last 70, 80 years. It's been just over 80 years since the Liberal Party was launched. We entered this two-party system. It was never a two-party system. We were a two-party public. We kept voting for the same two parties and we built in our own minds this prison of the two-party system. Well, that delusion has been destroyed. Everyone can see now we are not a two-party system. We actually never were. We are now a three-party voting public, and One Nation have broken that illusion. And the people that have made that shift across to One Nation, the delusion that the Liberal Party and the likes of Carlz Samaras with what he said about the Liberal Party and even the Labor Party, the delusion that they're all holding to is that those people can be won back with a few tweaks to policies and maybe a few spending sprees here and there. And maybe if we dangle a bit of taxpayers' cash, a bit of middle-class welfare under their noses, then they'll come back. They'll come and vote for us again. No, they didn't leave you because they didn't like your policies. They left you because they don't like being lied to. And once you break people's trust at that moral level, you don't get them back with policies. You don't get them back with a change of leadership. This is why Angus Taylor didn't accomplish what they said he was going to accomplish when he replaced Susan Ley. Because as much as Susan Ley was hated, especially in the seat of Farrah, they didn't leave because of Susan Ley. They left because they realized they're going to keep lying to me until I stop accepting their lies. So they've changed. It's a fundamental moral shift that is happening right now. And this is seismic. This is literally, there is a before and there is an after. And the 9th of May, 2026, the Farrah by-election, that is the dividing line between the before and the after. We are now into uncharted political territory, and we're about to see Australian politics get reshaped just like it was reshaped in 1944 when the One Nation, when the Liberal Party was launched.
And not only that, I think, for all the naysayers out there who say selected, not elected, and it doesn't work, everyone that's drawn a dick on a ballot, everyone that donkey votes, well, this is like, shove this in your pipe and smoke it, right? This is democracy in action. This is people going out and saying, no, I am voting for change. I do not want this. And guess what? When you all do the right thing and you all go, you know what, we're going to go in there and vote correctly, you get the result you want. This is why I get so mad when people message me and saying, oh, voting's rigged, don't bother, selected, not elected.
Those people have already pivoted. They're now saying that One Nation is part of the problem. They're just another Zionist shill organization. And you and I have observed this before, this Black Pill Brigade. It's a facade for laziness. If you believe that nothing you do will make a difference, then you can justify doing nothing. If you
Yep.
admit that doing something could make a difference, then you have to explain, well, why aren't you doing something? Stop being lazy. They want to be lazy. They want to cop out. And so what happens is the minute someone starts to be successful, the minute something happens that could prove that their black pill is wrong, they have to find a reason why they're now part of the problem. So what that means by definition, their worldview is built on the idea that anyone who gets anywhere is a them, is a bad guy. Yeah.
Hang on.
You looked great for a second there.
I look great, don't I? Hang on a sec.
So their whole worldview, they have to keep tearing down. I mean, this is tall poppy syndrome on steroids. The minute anyone gets anywhere, the minute you and I get a big audience or a big following, the minute One Nation have some success in the polls or in an election, all of a sudden they have to pivot their worldview to say that these people are actually part of the problem. They're part of the they. They wouldn't have let them get there unless they were compromised. They must have something on Pauline. Pauline must have sold us out, or, you know, Carlz must have sold us out, and, you know, that they wouldn't let her get onto these big podcasts, blah, blah, blah. They have to find a way to tear people like you and I down.
Now, Pauline's obviously a Zionist, as we know, but she's also in the Epstein files and all this nonsense. I'm like,
sure.
To be that cynical must come as such a curse, right? Like, a bit of healthy skepticism is great, but getting to a point where when anything good happens, you can't take it and accept that occasionally you do have some wins. Guys, I can't help you. And look, I'm not even it's not even worth talking about those people. But I mean, we're seeing this now. I know you did a video recently on Dan Bilzerian. It's come out that they're in Qatar and they're taking money from Qatar and all this sort of stuff. Like, you want to talk about the black pill? I dare say a bunch of these people, your Dan Bilzerians, the people who are anti-Israel and all that, I dare say a lot of that is funded, whether deliberately or like subconsciously behind the closed doors, you know.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I mean, Dan Bilzerian is a really good example. Like, you know, I talk about Abby. He's a great example. He's an influencer, right? This is someone who has built a following of just shallow hedonism. But not only that, he's a fundamental liar. He lies about everything. He lies about his wealth. He lies about the women. He lies about the house that he owns. And now all of a sudden, he's someone that we should be listening to in regards to like geopolitics and foreign wars. Like, what?
He's a fine, upstanding member of society all of a sudden.
You know, like, I'll never forget, what's his name? The guy from Shark Tank, Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, right? Went and interviewed him at this absolutely ostentatious LA mansion that apparently Dan Bilzerian bought with his company Ignite, which I now believe it was valued at some crazy amount, and turned out that it was not turning over any money at all. Like, its revenue was basically $100,000 for this $400 billion company. Now, anyone who knows how Dan Bilzerian's dad fared in the law, who's now still on the run, he literally built a Ponzi scheme. So the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, but Dan Bilzerian was literally in this crazy mansion saying he owned it. And the owner of the property came out and said, no, you don't. You're renting it. And by the way, you're behind in rent.
And you know, Andrew Tate does the same thing. He goes and rents a castle that's available on Airbnb and does a bunch of content from there. Oh yeah, this is just one of my holiday homes. I own them all over the world, blah, blah, blah. You know, the tragedy is how sad is this as a society? There are places you can go. I think Asia has a lot of them. I saw a few when I was in Japan, where they have these sets built and you can take your phone in there and take your little Instagram photos and blah, blah, blah. And they have fake airplane seats, and you can sit up against the window, and there's the wing, and they'll put an image up on a screen behind it for you, and you can take your photos and pretend like you're off to wherever it is. Like, how sad is that? I want to come back to Farrah, though, because this is a really good question from Jen Oz11. Is this the Jen that you were saying has requested we get her drunk?
Yes.
Okay, well, we have more work to do because she can still type. So obviously we haven't done our job yet. She says, Topher, what's really pissing me off is how many people are saying Farley will abandon Pauline. What's your opinion on that? I think it's fucked. Okay, so this is based on the fact that about 75% of the people that have been elected under the One Nation name have left. Now, there's a couple of key points with this. Some of them were using her from the start, and that was never their intention to stay. She was the vehicle by which they were going to get themselves elected, and they succeeded. Some of them were kicked out by Pauline. Not all of them actually left. Some of them actually were ejected from the party by Pauline because she has standards, and you meet those standards or you're out. And she would rather lose somebody from the One Nation fold than have somebody who's undermining what she's actually working towards. And then there are others where they had personality clashes. And Pauline is of necessity, a very strong personality. She has very clear ideas about what she believes, what she stands for, what she wants done, and how she wants it done. And she wouldn't be where she is if it weren't for that personality. I talk about this in my first book. The In Defense of Assholes is the name of the chapter. Now, Pauline's not an asshole, but you don't get that kind of strength without a certain amount of willingness to have a fight with somebody when they don't see eye to eye with you. So what does that mean in the context of what used to be the Pauline Hanson One Nation Party, but is now the One Nation Party? And that gives you a clue as to where we're going here. When it was the Pauline Hanson One Nation Party, Pauline made all the decisions. She decided who the candidates were going to be, and she micromanaged and ran this whole thing like it was her fish and chip shop, like she could see every counter and every employee and what they were doing. She hadn't put in place the management structure, the systems, the branches, the pre-selections. It was all under her direct control. Now, that was what allowed the party to recover in 2000, I think it was 15, when she came back into the party. It was a nothing. And she's rebuilt it since 2015. That's what's allowed her to do that. But this time around, she understood that becomes the limit to her growth. That if you can't put in place systems and if you can't trust other people, then there's a cap on how big you can get. So now I've now met the One Nation CEO. I've now met a bunch of the other executive staff. These are the people coming in that are now going to go between Pauline Hanson and the pre-selection processes and the branches and all the other stuff that has to happen. She's removed her name from the party. And this is really significant. She knows she's towards the twilight of her career. She knows that she's no longer thinking about making One Nation get somewhere. She's thinking about making sure One Nation continues when she's no longer in charge of it. And she's putting in place all the right things. She's putting in place branches at federal level and at state levels. The branches are now pre-selecting their own candidates rather than being a captain's pick by Pauline. Now, what all of that means is that there is a lot more buffer. There's a lot more room for disagreement within the party without it leading to someone having to leave or being kicked out. But more than that, in David Farley's case specifically, I've now spent a bit of time with him. I've had a couple of really good chats with him. I've watched him and Pauline disagree. So he came out and said what he said about migrants. Now, what he said about migrants was, sorry, we need them. In the agricultural community, in the agricultural industry, without migrants, your shelves run dry. And he's spot on. He's absolutely correct. Now, what he failed to do was to differentiate between migrants who earn their keep and migrants who don't, because Pauline is not actually anti-migrant. The media love to pretend that she is. She's not an anti-migrant absolutist. She wants to stop it for a period of time, let the infrastructure catch up, but she doesn't want to keep the doors closed forever. She knows that we need migrants, but she knows that we need to care about the quality of those migrants. What David was defending were the high-quality migrants that come and do work and earn money and pay taxes and add to our society. And he failed to make that distinction. Now, if you go back and watch my election night coverage and listen to David Farley's speech, he talks about migrants. And I don't know what the camera angles showed, but I was standing right there and I could see Pauline's face. And you could see that she was ready. She was listening carefully and she was concerned. How is this going to come out? And David did a much better job of differentiating between those two different groups. And I could see clearly Pauline was very satisfied with what he said and how he said it in that moment. So I've now watched them have a conflict and resolve that and move through. I do not believe for a moment that David is going to walk away from the One Nation Party. Keep in mind as well, the One Nation Party now has a big future. These people that used it as a vehicle to get elected, why would you do that now when the party, if you stick with it, could carry you all the way into government? Of course you'd stay with it. So I think for a whole host of reasons, no, I think that's just the media trying to cause trouble.
Of course. I think the other thing is too, like I have not met David, but just my observations, he's an older gentleman as well. There's a level of stoicness that's required to be in government. And you said this before, he'll be inexperienced now that he's going in. And yes, that's true. But he's inexperienced to the political machine, but he's not inexperienced in life. You know, was he 75, 76?
He's actually way more experienced than I initially thought. He's done business internationally. He's run organizations with multiple billions in revenue every year. And he was Johnny on the spot. He was the head honcho of those organizations. The team around him, which are just literally friends and people that he's brought in, these are also mostly men with multinational business experience. These people understand how corporations and systems need to be put in place to make something function and to work well. So limited political experience, but very real life and corporate experience.
And that's what's so important. I've got a story, and I want to be careful not to jump over, but Hannah Ferguson from Cheek Media, she came out in defense of the ISIS brides. And I don't want to talk about ISIS brides yet. We'll come back to it. But she made a comment, right? And Jen, Jen, I'm looking at you. This one's for you. Get your drink. Get your drink, because you asked me for this specifically. Hannah Ferguson, she's 22, and she made a comment. We both, so she's talking to a colleague. She's like, we both have master's degrees. And I was like, honey, if you're 22 with a master's degree, that tells me you have been institutionalized since you were 6 years old. You have never stepped foot into the real world. You think your social media following is the real world? You have never, ever stepped into the real world. You know, digital media is not the same as real life, and nor is your master's at fucking 22.
I tell you, and why would we listen to anyone with a master's degree? Honestly, if I knew somebody with a master's degree, I would boot them out of my life. What an absolute how poor must your judgment be to choose to go and spend more time in a cesspit like a university and spend a small freaking fortune for such a shitty piece of paper? Honestly, I no respect for anyone with a master's. Oh, really?
I still don't bloody have my certificate. I don't get it till October. I don't get to wear my bloody hat until October. I'm like, this is bullshit. I've been graduated since October. But I cannot wait for the day when you have to introduce me as Dr. Carlz J Söda.
Oh gosh, we are giving our livers a workout tonight.
No, but yes, I just thought it was really interesting. And I mean, I'm not going to rehash the whole masters thing, but you know, there's this credentialism where the young ones believe I've been to university. You don't understand. I'm like, bitch, I've been to university and I've got 20 years of real life work experience prior to the internet, by the way. So I actually have what you have plus 20 years. So shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and this idea that it being institutionalized, I mean, when you think about it, if someone spends 10 years in prison, we give them a halfway house on the way out just to get accustomed back to the real world, right? You put a kid into childcare when they're 3 years old, and then they go through kindy and primary school and high school, and they go straight to university and they do a master's and maybe go on to do a doctorate. They come out, they're 27, 28 years of age. The only thing that they have ever known for literally 23, 24 years is institutions. They literally need a halfway house just to actually cope with the real world. Yeah,
100%. And look, I will say this as someone who literally, Kat just had to clarify then, Kat thought I was being serious. No, I understand how hard it is. I literally just did it myself. But you know, credentialism and this obsession with having this tertiary education to make you qualified to be able to speak on a certain topic is absolute nonsense. And I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to throw my boyfriend under the bus here, but he's a perfect example, right? G runs, I'm not going to say exactly what he does, but he works on race cars, right? He has his own shop. G is not a qualified mechanic, but he is someone with 30 years of exceptional knowledge, so much so that other industry leaders always take their car to G to fix because they couldn't solve it themselves. So I'll give you an example. There's another shop down the road near us, and they don't work on the cars that G works on. G works on JDMs, and they had this car and they'd been working on it for months, couldn't solve whatever the problem was. And they called up G and they said, look, you know, I know you don't work on this car, but can you just have a look for us? And G solved it within 24 hours. Now, the reason I bring that up is G's like the best in the business. And I'm not just saying that because he's my boyfriend. He actually is. But he doesn't have the piece of paper. So does that mean all of his knowledge, his 30 years, like G has been playing in cars and on cars since he was 10 years old, right? Like you can't teach that. You cannot teach. And it's like, to a point, this is what cracks me up. This is how you know it's mechanic hands. We put the new Duna cover on the bed last night, and it has really fiddly buttons, and like my little fingers, they're fuddling around. I couldn't put them on. G's like, that's a mechanic hand, right? Just like.
That's a hell of a way to tell us that your boyfriend is good with his hands. That was more information than what I wanted to hear.
Ladies, get yourself a mechanic. Anyway,
and the best part is when he comes home from work, they're already lubricated.
I was just saying that. You guys can't say this show isn't entertaining. Sorry.
No.
I give that example because I actually know so many people who are truly gifted at a thing because, you know, it's obsession and passion, and they don't have the credentials. They don't have the piece of paper, and people don't want to take them seriously. I'm like, I've been through the education system myself. I've got a bachelor's and now I've got a master's, and I do plan to do my PhD. But so I feel like I'm qualified to give that position and assessment that a lot of these people, my professor who I just had, right? He had a doctorate himself. This person is so insulated from the reality of the real world because I went in there. And so, Kat, I don't know if you're new to the show, but I just wanted to give you some context, right? The whole reason I went back to university is I am a big believer, and I love Jordan Peterson and I love what he did with Peterson Academy. And I agree with him. We need to take back the arts and we need to take back the institutions. And the only way to do that is to play their game and beat them at it, right? You can't just go, oh, now fuck it, like throw tertiary education in the bin. No, we need it. It's important and it deserves to be taken seriously, but they've made a mockery of it. And that's the whole reason I went to do my master's, right? And so what you have is all of these people who go, well, David Farley's never been in politics. One Nation have never built a hospital. They don't know how. And it's like, because they've never been in government.
Yeah. And
right?
also, that's literally what, just can I pause on that? That's why we have the bureaucracies. The bureaucracies continue from one government to the next. They are the ones that carry out the functions. The politicians set the policy direction. They make the overarching decisions, and it's up to the bureaucracies to make them happen. When you go from a Labor government saying we'll build that hospital to a Liberal government or a One Nation government saying we'll build that hospital, it gets handed to the same department staffed by the same bureaucrats. Now, that's a good thing and a bad thing. That comes with some pretty big downsides too. But ultimately, Pauline Hanson does not need to know how to design the floor plan of a hospital. She just needs to be able to make good decisions about where they're needed.
Yeah, exactly. So, sorry, I'm just reading the comments. Just made an old lady blush. Sorry. I love our comments. God, they get funny. Anyway, this is great. Surely the term masters is sexist. Shouldn't you refer yourself to a mistress?
There you go, G.
That's a great point. Okay, so can we? I want to go into politics, but I want to bring up this thing. I think we need to talk about this.
Newsflash, everybody! Carly's going into politics. You heard it here first.
I could not think of anything less.
You just said it. You just said. I mean, hey, you're breaking your promises. You'd be perfect for politics.
All right, here we go. I've just got to pull it up. I don't follow her, so I'll find this thing. All right. So I apologize, guys. Oh, she deleted it. Hang on, let's have a look. Oh, no, she hasn't. She hasn't. Okay. I will say this about Gen Z. They don't do the dirty delete, so you can always find what they've posted because they're like, no, I'll double down. All right, so this is who I was just talking about. We're going to talk about the ISIS brides. I think this is important. And I want to start by showing you this post. So you guys have probably seen Hannah Ferguson. She's been on a couple of those panels with SBS. And anyway, so this is what she posted about the ISIS brides. I'm going to read it for those who are listening to the audio. So she wrote, as the media manufactures fear around the return of 4 Australian women, not ISIS brides, Australian women, and 9 children from Syria, dubbed ISIS brides, remember these facts. The group has been investigated for over a decade. Those alleged to have committed crimes will be charged upon arrival. There is no evidence that Australians who have returned from Syria have gone on to engage in terrorism. ASIO Director General Mike Burgess said he is not concerned by their return, but security agencies will monitor them closely. Other Western nations have already repatriated their citizens, and Australia has a legal and humanitarian obligation to our citizens. Now, that's a very progressive take. Would you agree?
No, actually, I think that's actually correct, but it highlights the absolute hypocrisy of the Morrison government during COVID.
Thank you. I was going to go more down the road of, you're right, Hannah, we do have human rights. And we also have the human rights for the slaves that these women held so that they could be raped by their husbands. I noticed that you don't talk about that at all. The Jewish people who were massacred in Bondi, I I notice that you don't mention those when we talk about human rights. You don't talk about the human rights of people who were forced the vaccine during COVID. You don't talk about those human rights. You don't talk about the human rights of the Israelis who were mass raped and tortured and slaughtered in October 7. You don't talk about those ones. They're very selective with their human rights. And the framing around this is fucking dangerous, right? She's called them women. These are monsters. Sorry, you lose that title when you, in the year of the 2020s, had a slave that your husband repeatedly raped. Sorry, you lose your ability to call yourself a woman. You become a monster. That's who you are. You are a terrorist monster. And I hate this deliberate use of language that's meant to make us feel something, right? You're meant to have some empathy. I don't have empathy for terrorists at all, because where's the empathy for the victims of all the suicide bombings that we've had since 2014? Where's the empathy for the little children who were blown to pieces at an Ariana Grande concert, right? Where's the empathy for all of the people who have been rammed by ISIS drivers in trucks? Where's that empathy? I don't see that on display. I'm sorry. This is a evil terrorist ideology. These women, the only thing they deserve is to live the rest of their lives in jail. I will stand by that. And I am so done with, so Hannah Ferguson, she's the one I was talking about before. She's the 22-year-old with the master's degree who thinks she knows everything about the world. Hannah, you need to get out of this country more and travel and start to learn about people, that people are not made equally. This delusion that all people are made equal, that is fundamental bullshit. Some people are just rotten. Some people are truly evil. And I believe that. And these ISIS women are those people. You only need to travel to a couple of countries and have a couple of encounters with people and go, wow, okay. Wow. You know, you get punched in the face a couple of times. You get pickpocketed, you get assaulted, you get harassed, and you start to go, hang on a minute. The world operates differently to what I thought they might, right?
Now,
Let's have a couple of run-ins with some MS-13s and see what she says about that. Right.
That's true, but what Arklux says here is also true. Technically, if they are Australian citizens, then they are our problem. Where people get mixed up is that the fact that we're obliged to take them back should mean that they get off scot-free, and that, of course, is not the case. Now, we have seen some charges laid, and I'm not going to comment on that because that's now obviously an ongoing prosecution, etc.
But hang on, can we talk about what those charges were? They're not just terrorism charges. These are the direct words. They are crimes against humanity.
Oh, no, I agree. But understand what I'm saying is that is the correct approach. Now, I actually haven't seen whether she got bail or not. I hope she didn't.
No, they didn't. They denied them bail.
Oh, they didn't get bail. Oh, that's good. Okay. So I'm actually going to go out on a limb here and say, if they hold Australian citizenship, we are obliged to take them back. That's how it works. They're obliged to pay taxes and obliged to do all those things, and the country is obliged to take them back. We're not obliged to turn a blind eye to the crimes against humanity that they've committed elsewhere in the world. And so, honestly, at least some of them have been charged, now remanded in custody, I find out just now. Honestly, that seems to me that the system is kind of at least functioning at some level.
Yeah. Look, the thing about taking them back, sure, you're right. I agree. If they're Australian citizens, they do technically have the right to come back into this country, but not aided by our government. How much taxpayer money, whether directly or indirectly, was funneled towards these women? How many people in back rooms were able to facilitate this? These women were destitute. They were living in a refugee camp on the outskirts of Syria. They had no money. They weren't working. They got money from somewhere, right? How much of that came from our government or taxpayer NGOs, taxpayer funneled money into NGOs, right? Like, that's what I want to know.
Yeah, no, and you know, we've got similar issues here to what were uncovered by the Doge project in the US, where an awful lot of our foreign aid money is actually just being funded, being funneled as funding into, essentially terror organizations. It's a tricky thing. It's one of those moments where someone like me has to come out on the side of the bad guys and say, yes, we need to take them back, but we absolutely need to hold them accountable. This comes back to what I say ad nauseum. It's about individual accountability. This is about saying, you committed crimes, you are going to be held accountable for your crimes.
This quote from 1984, Capital Lance from Nam, is correct. This is Orwell said, "It was always the women, and above all the young ones, who were the most bigoted adherents of the party, the swallowers of slogans and the amateur spies and the noses out of the unorthodoxy." And it's so true. It's so true. This suicidal empathy. I mean, what's his name? Gadsad has his book coming out shortly, I think at the end of this month, when he talks about this ridiculous progressive idea that, you know, all people are made equal. I said before, I fundamentally reject that idea. I don't believe that for a second. And I say that not because I don't think people are inherently good. I think people are just born rotten. I do believe that to be true. I know you can talk about that in the Bible as well. But when it comes to these ISIS brides, you think about what they participated in and the ideology they stood for. The fact that these women will never have a job in this country, right? These people will be living off taxpayer subsidies. That's it. These people will be on the NDIS, or they'll be on Centrelink in some way, shape, or form. They will get money from the taxpayers. So tell me how we reward terrorists. Like, it's insane to me. It's insane to me.
Yeah, I mean, they should never walk free again. That's my assessment. They should absolutely never walk free again.
Because you know who's not walking free? All the people murdered under the name of ISIS. What about that?
Agreed. Now, we're an hour and 20 in and we haven't got to the UK yet. And there's been some interesting
God, there's too
going
much
in
to
the
talk
UK.
about.
Well, that's what happens. That's what happens when you slack off for a week, Carly. You go on some jaunt in some romantic destination in jolly well Southeast Asia somewhere and go and sit on a beach sipping pina coladas. I don't know what you got up to, but this is what happens. There's a lot to talk about when you get back.
All right, talk to me about, I know roughly what happened, but I don't know all the nuance. But I know that Labor in the UK just got absolutely pantsed, annihilated, slaughtered.
So I actually don't have the details on this because I haven't done a video on it yet because there was so much other stuff going on. But in broad brushstrokes, Reform have performed exceptionally well. So here's what happened. They have 3-ish levels of government in most of the UK. They've got the federal government, and then they don't sort of have states in the way that we do. They have counties, and then in a large part of the country, they also have local councils as well. And what they're trying to do is kind of merge the county and the local government level, and there's the restructuring going on, and they use that as an excuse to delay a whole heap of council elections. So normally there's a council election happening somewhere in the UK pretty much all the time, and they're just continuously rolling on and on somewhere in the UK. But actually a lot of them got postponed because, like, well, if we're going to be getting rid of this council soon, then there's no point having a council election. Let's not waste the resources. But then, of course, the merger got delayed and years rolled by, and they never, the same councillors that were elected 8 years ago in some cases were still the councillors today with no elections booked in. So eventually Keir Starmer was forced to pull his finger out and go, right, we're holding all this backlog of elections. So on essentially the one weekend, about 1/3 of all of the British councils were up for re-election, which is an unusual thing in the UK. And what's happened is he's been forced to do that at a time when, of course, Reform are surging in the polls. And it's been a little bit like One Nation in Australia. People have been saying, oh, but it won't translate in a real election. It's just protest opinion polls. It won't really unfold that way in an actual election. Well, the council elections, much like the Farrah by-election last weekend here in Australia, proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that the sentiment being expressed in opinion polls is very, very real. So I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but a phenomenal. Have you?
I've got it here. So the UK Labour Party suffered historic and sweeping defeats in the recent May 2026 local and regional elections, losing control of 37 councils, over 1,300 council seats across England, Scotland and Wales. And the devastating results have triggered an open rebellion within the party and severe pressure on Prime Minister Keir Starmer. England's Red Wall, Labour faced an unprecedented collapse in its traditional working class strongholds in the North and Midlands. Notably, Sunderland, which was a foundational Labour stronghold for 50 years, saw the party fall from 50 councils to just 5. Scotland's and Wales wipeout. The party suffered its worst ever results in Wales, where it has governed since devolution in 1999, and Scotland being reduced to just 9 seats in the 96-member Welsh Synod, I think. Key council losses. Labour lost control of major city councils, including Birmingham, Barnsley, Cambridge, Oxford and Wandsworth.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting here, I've paid enough attention to spot the misinformation that's come back. And online, what was happening as you know, I was distracted with all the Farrah stuff. But online, when people were talking about the UK, the defenders of the status quo would put up numbers saying, "Oh, look, Labor still has the most councillors. You know, Reform still only have a minority of councillors, etc." Yes, that's because only 1/3 of councils have gone up for election since the rise of Reform. It's like people saying, "Oh, well, One Nation only have one lower house MP federally." Yes, that's because there's only been one federal election since the rise of One Nation. When as we get to the next federal election here in Australia, that's going to change. As more councils have their elections in the UK, that is going to change. And what's very, very clear is where the momentum is going. Now, what's interesting to me, there's now a lot of speculation around Keir Starmer and whether he can hold on to his position as the Prime Minister. So they have a system pretty much the same as ours in this sense. The Prime Minister is not like the US President, directly elected by the people. Instead, he's just another MP, and then the MPs vote amongst themselves to decide who's going to be the Prime Minister. We do the same thing here in Australia. So they can change Prime Minister without needing an election. It's just done amongst the MPs. So Keir Starmer is already one of the historically most unpopular Prime Ministers the UK has ever had. And that's saying something. They've had some really unpopular ones. If he's not setting new records, he's certainly getting close. And there's been a lot of speculation around his leadership for quite some time. But he's kind of been managing to hold on, I think partly because no one wants to depose him and then find that doesn't create the bounce, that they have the problem that Angus Taylor has got right now in Australia as the opposition leader. But such an abysmal result in the council elections is going to light a bit of a fire under their ass, because in the UK, they don't have to have another federal election till 2029. So in theory, he could just sit there and hold on for another 3 years, and the Labor Party won't lose any of their seats in the federal government. The problem is they're losing so much ground everywhere else that there's going to be a lot of people within the Labor Party machine as a whole. They're not concerned about Keir Starmer and his job and his ego. They're concerned about all of the council elections that are coming up. They're concerned about all the funding they're losing, all the donations they're losing. They're concerned about how much power they're losing at that grassroots level. And Keir Starmer's position is getting to be quite untenable. I haven't followed the details. Maybe in the comments, people can help me out here. Someone has actually said that they're going to challenge him. I don't know if that's actually happened yet, but someone's come forward and said that they're going to challenge him for the leadership if he doesn't step down. I think probably by about now, the deadline would have to be getting close to having passed on that. So we might see some movement on the leadership of the UK in just the next couple of days. I can't see how Keir Starmer stays where he is. And to be honest,
I can't either.
I can't see how the Labor Party don't get forced into an early federal election. I don't know
enough about how their system works, but
yeah, well, when I say forced, I don't believe there's a mechanism to literally legally force it to happen. But the UK still have a fairly strong sort of democratic instinct. They are very proud of their system and the way that they do things in the UK. And to sit there with a government that is that unpopular but is refusing to call an election is only going to hurt them more and more in all the local council elections, the county elections, everywhere. It's just going to keep hurting them. Yeah. So I think just the pressure of that reality might actually push them to the point where they actually have to go to the polls well before the 2029 deadline. So the UK could get very, very interesting over the course of the rest of this year.
2 seconds. G, may I please have some more drink? I need to get my slave. I've got my own slave.
That's funny. I'm pretty sure I heard Jen say the same thing. I think she was running dry as well.
Yeah, look, I'm really buoyed by this, but I wanted to bring up this article, this post, from ABC journalist. I'm sorry, we're talking a lot about ABC tonight. Here we are. Where is his name? Peter Crunell, whatever. And here we go. So this is what he's written. He's written, the fact that such similar far right-wing parties are rising around the Western world at precisely the same time suggests a level of coordination by foreign hands. Guys, it's a Russia hoax. Russia. Or is it the CCP?
Yeah,
I don't know. He's going to tell us.
Turns out the left have become the conspiracy theorists now. They believe in the shadowy rooms full of power brokers making decisions and telling everyone else how to live. I actually saw that post on X and I made a comment on it. Essentially, what's happening around the world is all over the world, people are realizing that the current system doesn't work for us. That's happening simultaneously around the world. I don't think it's any coincidence that it's happening only 5 years after the beginning of all the COVID nonsense. It's taken a couple of years to kind of flow through, but people are realizing, hang on, this system doesn't work for me and it's hurting me. And like I said before, they're withdrawing their consent at a moral level. This isn't about policy. This isn't about the personality. This is about the legitimacy of the entire system. Not that the systems are going to get destroyed, but they're saying, who can I vote for within the system who is going to help me fight against the system? We've talked about this before. Past world wars were fought against foreign governments that wanted to take away the freedoms of the citizens. We're in another world war now. Thankfully, it's not a blood war, not at this point, and I hope it stays that way. But we are in a fight for our freedom against our own government. It looks different. It feels different. The tactics are different. The strategies are different. But fundamentally, we are now having to take on our own governments to protect the very same freedoms that our ancestors fought for against foreign governments. And that realization has happened around the world at very, very similar times. Let's mention Germany. They've just had, and again, I'm not deep into this, I've been so distracted, but in Germany, they've just had another round of municipal elections. And I believe the AfD picked up about another 11 percentage points in their support in the most recent round of elections. So everywhere we look, from France, where Le Pen's party are leading for the 2027 presidential election, in Germany with the AfD, in the UK with Reform, in Australia with One Nation, and there's lots of other countries as well where we see the same thing happening. People are withdrawing their consent from the people that told them, trust us, we know what we're doing. And the people have realized, no, you don't. You lie. You've been lying all along, and we no longer trust you.
It's the lies that have literally collapsed on them like a house of cards. But further to that, like you can say, like Jacinta Allen, I'm just going to use her as a really good example. She literally came out the day after an Aboriginal child was murdered and stabbed to death by another teenager and said Melbourne's safe. And then literally the next day someone else was murdered, right? And this is the thing. Like there's only so much you can lie to people, right? Like you get to a point where people realize that you're gaslighting them. The machete bins, I think, for example, was that was it for Jacinta. I really think that was the turning point. The reason being, it was so illogical. There was none of that was grounded in common sense. Anyone with even like 2 functioning brain cells looked at that and went, huh? Like the criminal's going to voluntarily go to the police station and go, oh, you know what? I'm handing in my machete. So that was the beginning of the end. And the reason this matters is like, you can say that Melbourne's the safest city in the world and we've got the toughest bail laws in the country, but then the same breath when someone gets their car stolen or their house broken into or they get assaulted on the street or they get raped, people go, well, hang on a minute, that's not my experience. We just saw someone get stabbed in the chest by a homeless person who was out on bail and is now already back out because they're a trans person. And people just start to go, hang on a minute, this is bullshit. And like in the UK, I only know this from Toby Robinson. I don't necessarily pay a lot of attention to the UK, so forgive me if I'm generalizing here, but the extraordinary amount of rapes that are happening at the hands of people who are undocumented, people who have immigrated over to the UK, and it was quietened down because of their race. Like that is just outrageous. And I think any decent Pakistani person who had fairly migrated to the UK would agree with that. And can I just give you an example? This is a bit of a, if you will, tangent.
Oh, my voice is still suffering from Saturday night and the 3 cigars I had afterwards. Me. Tangent time, tangent time, tangent time, tangent time, tangent time, tangent. I've lost track. Tangent time. See, that's what happens when you let me get out of practice. I can't even keep track of how many tangent times I've done.
Bloody hell. So, as you guys know, I was just in China, okay? And I was there on business for this bloke and myself. And I spent a lot of time with the factory that makes Topher's merch, right? So I went over there. For those who don't know this about me, I've been in the rag trade for a very long time. I'm very well versed with manufacturing offshore. And I'm just going to say it first because I know someone's going to say it. The reason we manufacture in China is because you just cannot do it in this country. And if you did, I guarantee you guys wouldn't pay the prices. And that's just the reality of it. If you want to have this argument, we can have this argument. But I went over there. I met our people, went to the factory. I showed it all on my Instagram. If you guys want to see it, it was all documented over there. And we had a really good conversation. So as they do, the Chinese are really big on building relationships. Now, what I'm about to say, to be really fucking crystal clear, is not an endorsement of the CCP. I'm going to say it one more time so you can hear me loud and clear. What I say next is not an endorsement of the CCP. But there is one thing that China has that I truly envy, and that is their nationalism, their patriotism. They are so fucking proud of who they are, their culture, and their country. We don't have that here anymore, and we haven't had it for a while. And sitting there at that table, there's about 6 of us, and obviously we're having conversations in broken English, good enough to be able to understand each other, but, probably lacking some nuance. And she said, we were talking about me having traveled because she had, if you can believe it, an Icelandic customer. And that's how this topic came up. And she's talking about how one of the brands, her biggest customers, is this Icelandic company. And it was a young kid, right? And I was like, Iceland, bloody hell, that's a long way from China. And she's like, oh, they were so wonderful. Anyway, I said, I went to Iceland a couple of years ago. She's like, wow. And you guys got to remember, like, the Chinese don't have the same level of what some do, but most of them don't have the level of wealth that you and I have in a Western country to just piss off to Iceland for a holiday, right?
To be honest, most Australians don't have that either, but yes, good for you.
And so it helps when someone else pays for your flights.
You're welcome.
Anyway, so we were having this conversation, and it was one of those moments where, when I say it humbled me, not to say I wasn't already humble about this, but it's just like a nice little reminder of like, yeah, I am very lucky, right? And we were talking about it. She's like, I would just dream to be able to go on a holiday to like places like that. I'd love to be able to see it. And we were talking about it, and I said, do you mind if I asked you, like, what's it like having a business in China? Like, what's your tax rate? And she said, our tax is really high. We pay 20% company tax. And I'm like, we pay more than that in Australia. What do we pay now as company tax? Is it 24%?
I thought it was 30. But then actually, is there a difference now between smaller and larger? I don't know. I'm not actually.
I haven't looked at it for a while. To be fair, this is why I have an accountant. So company tax is over 25%, I think now. I think it went up. Anyway, regardless. And she's like, oh, I said, no. Australia is not as good as you think it is. Like, we have this, this, and this. And we're talking about taxes. And she was telling me, because like everyone thinks that because China is the Communist Party, it's not a communist economy. It's a very capitalist economy. They love entrepreneurship. They love business. And in that sense, China is world above what we've got here. They are very pro-business to a degree.
Economically, they actually fit the description of fascist more than they do communist. And this is, again, why we talk about all the time. The line between those two things is much smaller than most people actually believe that it is. I'm out of kombucha, Carly, so I'm having to resort to opening one of these.
What is this?
This is a Highland Park 12. It's a good sort of budget. It's not expensive, but it's a good sort of Islay peated whiskey.
Well done you. Here we go. Australia's company tax rate is 25% for base rate entities, small to medium businesses, and 30% for all other companies. Thank you, Gary. So she didn't realize that, right? And so we're having further conversations, and she said, oh, what's Australia like right now? And I said, to be honest, we're having some tough times. And, and again, like I said this on my Instagram, and people got really worked up. I said, we get a lot of Western propaganda about China. A lot of Australians have these thoughts about China that aren't necessarily accurate. And I know that because, of the people who are watching my my documentary of what I was doing when I went around, not actual documentary, like when I was documenting, people like, wow, I didn't know China was like this, Carly. This is completely not what I thought. I was like, yes, this is why I show you, right? I'm showing you the factory. I'm showing you the workers. Like, I got nothing to hide. This is not sweatshops. This is not what you think it is. And it's interesting because I had some pushback. I had a couple of people say, oh, Western propaganda, what trash. You clearly on the CCP payroll. And I was like, what part of you doesn't think that our governments like participate in propaganda? Weapons of mass destruction, anyone? COVID, right?
Yeah. So when I was in China in 2018 or 19, I don't remember, I was over there on a business trip to do with the drive go-karting center that I was trying to start up that got killed by COVID. We were getting custom barriers for the track made, and we had a 10-meter long plastic mold made up. This thing cost me $25,000 just to have the mold made up so they could make the barriers one at a time. I then had to pay for the barriers on top. That was just the mold. And I went over there to the manufacturer. I saw the mold and I saw the initial sample products that they'd produced out of that mold. And it was interesting. So I'm in this plastics place, and this particular company, they made all the barriers that get used in Formula One. They made the really high end stuff. That's why we picked them as our supplier. And I'm walking around and I'm with the owner of the company, who's also the boss. He's active in the company, but he's the owner. And I'm walking around, and all of the employees, and I'm not making this up, there was a very high-backed office-style chair for every single employee. This is a factory, but all around the place, there are all these high-backed chairs. And as I'm being shown the factory, all of the employees...
Having a nap.
They're asleep. They're asleep in the factory. The boss walks in. They're not like, oh no, I'm getting it. No. This was their nap time. They had like an early afternoon nap time. Now, their work day was very long. I'm not pretending that they don't, have some conditions that are worse than ours. I wouldn't want to swap with them. But we have this picture of nothing but sweatshops, nothing but, child slavery, all that sort of stuff. That has been true in the past, and it is still true in parts of China. And obviously there are some serious slavery issues, particularly with Uyghurs and other minority groups being oppressed. That's real. But actually, the vast majority of the companies that are actually set up to deal with Westerners, they are now making enough money that they've had to compete for labor, and they have to offer better conditions. This is exactly what happened in America as they industrialized in the early 1900s in particular. Early conditions were terrible. Of course they were. The alternative was to go and do subsistence farming. You can halfway starve to death, or you can put up with bad conditions in a factory and feed your family really well. Which one's worse? So yeah, the conditions were terrible. But then as they industrialized and as wealth began to be created very quickly, business owners very quickly discovered, I need to start paying my people better, because I'm losing people to that company over there who's trying to poach my people by offering them better conditions or better pay, or, not whipping them and, during the middle of the day, these sorts of things. What I observed in China was very much a two world. Now, I was in Guangzhou in the south, and I went to Hong Kong as well. But in Guangzhou, that's a heavy industrial district in the south of China, and there were kind of two Chinas. There was the Western fronted China, which was the bright shopping malls and the lovely hotels and all that sort of stuff. And my wife and I deliberately went for walks, through kind of the old China, these narrow laneways between 3-story high apartment blocks, where they would have literally sewing machines lined up on the ground floor. There would be a sweatshop on the ground floor, and then people living on the 2 floors above, rats' nests of wiring going over your head. There's no lifts, and so people would actually get home with their shopping, and they had little hand pulley things that they would lift up their shopping from the ground level through a window, so they didn't have to walk it up and down the stairs all the time. That was the level of living, was the reality for the average Chinese person on the street. But what was very, very clear was wherever Western money was coming in, these are the export companies, the manufacturers, these sorts of things, the living standards were skyrocketing very, very quickly. What's funny is that China is now using cheap African labor. They've spent a lot of money into Bangladesh as well, but particularly into Africa. Why? Well, because actually the cheap labor thing was kind of disappearing for China. And so now sometimes the Chinese actually white label things that were made in Africa. Some of the companies will do that. But the companies that are still manufacturing in China, and it's one of the reasons why you want to go across and see the factory, the conditions actually aren't terribly bad. They're comparable to what Australia would have been in the 1950s and 60s. It's not what a lot of people have in their head anymore.
It's not, and I'm not. Just to be clear, I'm not saying that those things aren't real either. Like, of course, there's some bad factories and things like that, but by and large, when you talk to the Chinese people and you ask them questions, they're more than happy to share some things. The most overwhelming thing was the surveillance presence. Like, everywhere you look, there's cameras, right? But if you're not doing anything wrong, you got nothing to worry about as a Westerner.
Yeah, I don't buy that argument for a second, but anyway, that's a different conversation.
Look, I don't think the CCP they knew exactly where I was at all hours of the day. But, what I will say too is when I was at the Canton Fair, I was there for the 5 days, and it was very hard to come past an Aussie. I was listening for an Aussie accent, massive contingent from Africa, very, very heavy presence from Africa, and also Russia and the Eastern Bloc, a lot of heavy Russian accents, excuse me. A lot of Africans walking around, and you see things on a global scale like that. And I think the reason I'm sharing this is that it reminds me how small Australia is, really. Like, I know big country, sure, but very small population in comparison to most of the countries in the world. What are we, 28 million now? 28 million?
Yeah, 27 and a half, 28. Yeah. Yep.
And you go to China where, allegedly their population is 1.4 billion, but you see the huge contingent of people coming from whether it's Africa, the US, Europe to the Canton Fair. And I mean, you're talking about millions of people walking those halls. And you just sort of go, maybe everything that Albo says isn't necessarily true, right? I want to say this about Russia as well. I haven't been to Russia, but I've got some very close Russian girlfriends. And they are very frank about Putin. People don't necessarily like Putin, but they appreciate that Putin is a nationalist because the Russians resent how they're always represented as the bad guys. That's their words, right? That's their words.
Yeah.
And, one of my closest mates, she's Russian, and she's like, half the stuff you guys think about Russia is absolute bullshit. She's like, it's not like that at all, right? Not to say that that doesn't have downsides. Of course they do. I'm not defending it, but I'm just saying that I think sometimes we look at things in this very limited lens of going, well, this has to be true because our country said it or the West said it. And I think it's important to keep your mind open. And sorry, go.
I want to make a comment on how China got to where they are today, because it's actually instructive for us and what we need to do, ironically. So China tried to follow the Russian model of communism, full government ownership, full government control, government setting the prices, all the rest of it, kill the dissidents. That was the plan. Massive starvation under Mao. They had the whole the thing where they're killing the birds because they thought the birds were eating the crops, but actually the birds were eating the bugs. And without the bugs ate more of the crops. And the whole country got pushed into a terrible, terrible famine. Literally tens of millions of people died. Some people put the figure at over 100 million. And I'm going to get his name wrong. It was the guy before Deng Xiaoping.
It was in the 70s. No, it was Deng Xiaoping. That's who it was.
It was Deng Xiaoping. Okay.
It. Yeah.
So what happened? What happened was there was a small rural community in regional China where they were starving to death, and some farmers got together in the dead of night and they re-privatized their farms just between them. Instead of doing the communal thing where they all were working everywhere, they said, right, this bit's yours, that bit's yours, that bit's yours, that bit's yours, this bit's mine. We're all going to work our own thing. And of course, instantly, the private property incentives kicked in. Now, America did the same thing when the first pilgrims arrived in wherever it was. Governor William Bradford put in a system that he called the Common Storehouse. It was socialism. Long before Karl Marx was ever born, the American settlers in Plymouth, you can look this up, Governor William Bradford in Plymouth, the Common Storehouse. They did that from, I believe it was 1620 to 1623, and they nearly starved to death. And William Bradford, to his credit, was humble enough to realize this isn't working. I've got something wrong. And so in 1623, he instituted private property. I'm so boring, even my TV goes to sleep. He instituted private property, and it literally turned around within a year. And all of a sudden, capitalism as we know it was kind of emerging in America, and they went on to become one of the world's greatest superpowers only a couple of centuries later. Now, Deng Xiaoping got word that there was this little tiny regional community somewhere in the back blocks of China that were suddenly meeting their production quotas. They were all of a sudden this one little patch of dirt in the middle of bumfuck nowhere that had no natural advantage to explain why they would be able to do what no one else was able to do, were suddenly hitting their centrally government mandated production targets. And I believe, you can fact check me on this because I might not be correct, but I actually believe he went out there in person because it was such an extraordinary thing. And he got there, and the farmers knew that their cover had been blown, and they genuinely expected to be executed because under Mao, they would have been executed. They were defying the communist model. They were enemies of the state. Deng Xiaoping went, whatever you're doing, it works. And he's now known as Deng Xiaoping the Reformer because he brought in a bunch of reforms. He instituted what has been since referred to as communism with Chinese characteristics. And what the Chinese characteristic is private ownership at the low level. If you want to become a big business in China, you're going to end up sharing ownership with the Chinese government, right? They're going to come in and take part of your business. But at a low level, private ownership is respected. Private ownership is a thing. Now, this is kind of not dissimilar. I don't remember which Russian ruler it was who adopted a commanding heights view of the economy. Instead of the bureaucracy trying to manage every price for everything, they would simply manage the commanding heights, the big inputs, things like energy and transport and so forth. And they would allow some price functions at a lower level in the economy. That was kind of their version of that. Deng Xiaoping took that kind of all the way. As long as you're a small business, you've got full private property ownership, which means you've got all of the incentives of genuine capitalism, of moderately free markets within the context of the bigger Chinese economy. That's why they went from an absolutely impoverished nation in the late 1970s to one of the global powerhouses today. That couple of decades of explosive growth and wealth was facilitated because the Chinese, and Deng Xiaoping specifically, said, hey, we need to get some capitalist incentives back into the very bottom rung, the very bottom layer of our economy. That's what made it possible. Now, in Australia, we're not a full Chinese communist country, but we are very much a country where all the commanding heights are controlled by the government. The government has regulated industries to the point that it's setting prices, deciding products and services and availabilities and where infrastructure is going to go. Correct. So we've already kind of got the Chinese model at the top end. We still have something resembling private ownership in the bottom end, but actually less free than what they have in China. And that's a reality check, isn't it? At the low level, if you're a small business owner, you would be more free in China to operate your business from an economic perspective.
That's what I got out of the conversation. Her name was Hyde, sorry. And we're having this back and forth. And in her mind, she was like, Australia's like this utopia. I'm like, oh, it's very pretty. Don't get me wrong. Australia's a beautiful country. But as far as our government goes, and we were both laughing, we're like, both of our governments are extraordinarily corrupt.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
And the other comment I wanted to make, sorry, just to finish this, is like, people are not their government. And I got really quite offended that people were coming at me in my comments talking about how I was defending the CCP just by saying that my experience in China was wonderful. Great people, very clean. And I went to two of the biggest cities. And I was going everywhere, man. I was going into the factories. I was going into the boondocks. I was going to the airports. I used the metro to get around. And I've got to tell you, it's not what you think it is. Like, not to say that bad stuff doesn't exist, to be clear. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. But by and large, my experience, like Chongqing, there's not a Westerner there, right? Like, you might see the odd token Westerner. That is purely domestic tourism. It's a city of allegedly, I think, 35 million people in this one precinct that's built into a mountain. They call it the cyberpunk city. And even though there were so many people, and there was definitely moments where I felt like overwhelmed with people. I did not hear an Aussie accent once. I didn't see many Westerners. In fact, I got so many looks, not bad looks, just more of oh, who are you? So,
Keli, what you're saying is that you finally got away from all those damn immigrants. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, I will say this. She did make a really funny comment because I had a giggle. She's like, oh, we have so many Indians coming to China and we don't want them. I was like... She was a lot more blunt than that. But just to round that out, this was actually not the story I wanted to tangent for. I won't tell it now because I've been talking too long. But around the corner from me is a little LPO that I use to do all of our shipping, right? That's where I drop off all your parcels. And she's tiny. When I say tiny, she's like 4'8". She's tiny, little Indian woman that owns it. And it turns out, I didn't know this, but she'd seen me on Instagram and she follows me. And she told me that tonight. I had no idea. She's like, oh, I saw that you're in China. And I'm like, what? How did you get out of my little LPO? And she's like, oh, I follow you on Instagram. And she's like, I love what you say. And she's like, your reel about Adrian Portelli really touched me. Because she's like, I think Australia is going the way of India and I don't want that. I came here for a good life. And I was like, fuck, And you had this as well, like you in your coverage of Pauline, you had, I think he was a Syrian or something, who was saying like, we got away from this and it's coming here. We don't want it.
An Iranian. He was an Iranian, yeah. And there was a girl from Cambodia who was literally dancing. She was literally bouncing on her feet. Couldn't wait to meet Pauline. And there was I don't know where exactly he was from, but he was a black African dude, came in, just wanted to shake Pauline's hand. And I mean, that was why I interviewed her on the side of the road, but it was because I was pretty sure that's what was going to happen. And so I invited them in to say hi, blah, 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 and then still tried to kind of keep the interview going at the same time. It was a bit tricky and the audio failed and then the editor had to clean it up. But the reality is when you see the reaction to Pauline on the street, and then ask yourself, is Jacinta Allen going to get that? Daniel Andrews, Anthony Albanese, even Scott Morrison. I've seen Scott Morrison at conferences surrounded by his own party members, and no one wants to talk to him. He's a lonely man at ARC, and I saw it again at ARC Australia. He's a lonely man in a room that is crowded, chock full of what's supposed to be his own people. Pauline Hanson shows her face in public, and people line up to say hello to her.
And this is what's interesting as well. Like, this is why I get really disgusted by the far right, if you would call them that, like the fash, because they're like, no migrants at all. I'm like, no. I want all of the hardworking migrants who are like, fuck yeah. Like Dubai has it, right? Dubai is attracting all of the wealth, all of the entrepreneurs, all of the people who want more from their life. I'm like, that's what Australia should be. We have no reason to not be that. We are so rich in resources and land, and we do anything but inspire people to lift themselves up and, to give things a crack. We do everything we can to pull people down like crabs in a bloody bucket, tall poppy, whatever you want to call it. And I'm sitting here going like, why isn't Australia recruiting some of the best? Like, I don't give a shit if you're Iranian, Indian, Cambodian, African. If you want to build something, come to Australia. I welcome you with open arms. But instead, we get all the bloody riffraff, the terrorist sympathizers, all the people who want to scam us through the NDIS. And that's why migrants get such a bad rap. You want to wonder why there's racism, if you want to call it that. Well, look at the Albanese government. Look at who they're bringing in. Look at Western Sydney and the people who showed up at the Melbourne airport to collect the ISIS brides. Albanese has brought those people into this country.
Carlz, I need to stop you there. I have some terrible news. Only Time Will Tell 204 has threatened that he's unsubscribing. So I think we need to completely change our worldview, completely change tack, completely change everything we're doing, reverse our opinions on absolutely every topic in the vain hope probably, but the hope that maybe we might not lose one subscriber. So
only time will tell. Well, only time will tell. I'm here to tell you I'm on the payroll of everyone. You name it, Mossad, CCP, Iran, Qatar. I'll take your dirty money and I'll spend it.
Somebody clip that. She really wants that. She really wants that Birkin. Or was it a Merkin? I can't remember now. Moving on. So we need to wrap up the show, but there's a couple of things I need to do. So Carl Stefanovic came to town, my town being Albury. He did a live show, his first ever show with a live audience. He's done live shows before where it's live streaming, but not with an audience present. And he says, well, that was fun. Thank you, you bloody legends in Albury. This is a public post that he made for such a fun night at the pub, our first live show with an audience. And man, we couldn't have had a better time. Thank you to the 250 people that came out. There is nowhere more fun than regional Australia. And thank you to those who watched the show on YouTube for all the comments, sledges, and ideas. Can't wait to do it again. And he's got some stats here. 154,000 views on episode content on YouTube. 12,000 likes on the live episode, 3,000 comments on the live chat, 1 million views on Instagram, and over 750,000 views on Facebook content. So from a business point of view, Carl's pretty happy that he made the trek out to Albury. But that really pales in comparison for Carl to the really seminal career-defining moment that he had that night when he met me. And we took a selfie together. And what was interesting was he instantly recognized me. He knew exactly who I was very, very warm. We traded phone numbers, and tomorrow morning I'm getting up at a very unreasonable hour to get on a plane and fly to Sydney and record an episode of the Carl Stefanovic show, which I believe will be released on Wednesday of this week.
Oh, wow. You're recording it tomorrow and it goes up Wednesday. Ha!
I believe that's the case. No, I won't need to. Everything I say is perfect. No, he wants to do a show talking about the Farrah by-election and then talking about other stuff as well. So he's invited me to be his main man to come and tell Australia about the implications of the Farrah by-election and what it means and all the misinformation around it and all of that sort of stuff. And of course, I will make sure that we talk about some other topics as well. But the other interesting thing that happened while you were away, and look, I'm not trying to make you jelly or one-up you or anything, but the Punters Politics producer reached out to me.
It's almost like I reached out to them first. But anyway, keep going.
Yeah, but they reached out to me, and we haven't locked in a date yet, but they've asked me to come on to debate a bloke who runs an electric trucking company about net zero and the energy transition, all that sort of stuff. We're trying to make that happen before I go to the US, because obviously if it doesn't happen then it's going to have to wait for a couple of months. So we'll see if we can make that one work. But that was interesting. That was the second of my three little tidbits of information.
Yeah.
But now for the piece de résistance. When I was doing the live coverage, thanks to Rebel News for having me be their on-the-spot reporter at the One Nation after party, one of the people that I got to hang out with was Mark, who is the creator of the Please Explain cartoon series.
Yes.
And I said to him on air, he was streaming, some people watching will have seen this at the time. I said to him, can you make me into a character? It has to be a fat, hairy gopher with really bad buck teeth, who never uses doors. He always chews his way through the walls. And he's always trying to flog his merch, especially his book, Good Gophers Break Bad Walls.
And?
Well, he said yes, but mind you, he was under the duress of a live show, so I can't really hold him to that. I can't really hold him to it. But look, I'm hoping that I can make that happen. Honestly,
that happens.
That would be an absolute pinnacle highlight moment for me. If I get to appear as a fat, hairy gopher with buck teeth in a Please Explain cartoon, I will honestly, I will take screenshots and frame them.
Is your gopher not going to be holding like a spicy California Reaper named Spicy Carlz? Like,
no, I'm
what is
sorry.
this shit?
Carlz who? I'm clearly, who are you? I don't remember you. You must be from the olden days back when I wasn't a somebody.
I only have like five. I have like 5 times less followers than Abby Chatfield. You're right. I'm no one.
So this is exactly how I feel.
This is
If
what
that happens,
you made it. You've made it. You've been immortalized in a Please Explain. To be fair, only the best get in there. So, well, on
and the
that,
worst, it's like it's a binary thing. The people in the middle don't get there, but the best and the worst.
On Pauline Hanson, I want to bring up this topic. I know we're almost at the end, but guys, if you can indulge us another 10 minutes, I want to talk about some arty-farty wanker stuff. You know, I can't resist. So we're going to talk about the Archibald Prize.
I brought a pillow specially for this segment. Just excuse me, guys, while I just have a little nap.
So you guys would have seen this, the Archibald Prize. It's one of our most prestigious art awards, right? And it has gone to an artist called Richard Lua, and this is what won. The most prestigious art prize in our country. This is what won. Topher, do you want to tell me what you're looking at?
Well, I mean, I thought filters were better than that these days. It's clearly someone's taken a photograph and run it through a filter on like a Nokia 5110 that has made it look like it's been drawn with crayon.
I would say this is a Gumby version of a painting. And I want to just show you guys quickly what some of the Archibald Prize winners have looked like over the years. And let's have a look.
Stopped me in the middle of my tracks. I was literally just Googling.
Okay, so this is obviously what won this year, 2026. And we go back. Now, to be fair, art is subjective, but it can be objectively crap talent and objectively crap.
You still want to see technique. You still want to see excellence in execution, even if you dislike the idea.
Yeah, like 2023, I think that's a kind of cool picture. I don't disagree with that. This one here, Adam Goads, this one, right in the 2020 Black Lives Matter. I mean, that makes sense. Do you notice a theme? Since 2020 and 2019, is there a bit of a theme?
Look, I'm colorblind, so I can't. No, I don't know what you're getting at.
I won't say the unfavorable thing, but
hang on, go back up. 2016 is kind of interesting. That's got a moody kind of a feel to it.
That's what's his name? What's his name?
Humphreys.
Barry Humphreys, isn't it?
Yeah, Barry Humphreys. Yeah, I don't know. I can't tell from here, but it's I like the vibe of it.
This is Jigsaw from Saw.
Okay.
It's not. Do you know who Jigsaw is? He's the villain.
I know who Jigsaw is, but I don't know who that is in the picture.
It's a terrifying picture. It looks like a corpse. This one here, I have no idea who this is, but like this is cool artwork. I'm down with this.
So that's there's technique in that. There's genuine skill on display.
That's very cool. Let's scroll down, like let's go a little bit deeper. Let's go right back. But you know, we've always got a bit of tokenism in there. But let's go back to like, I don't know, the 80s and the 70s and have a look at some of the winners.
The Dark Ages.
Right? These are interesting portraits. There's craft in it. I'm not saying you have to like it. I'm just saying like this is what it was, and this is what currently is winning.
That's what it is.
And so
even last year's one, I mean, there's a lot of skill in that 2025 one.
Yeah, last year's one I think is quite cool.
Yeah.
You know, so I have an idea. I'm not a painter, right? I'm not a painter. I'm a portrait photographer. And I have set the ambitious goal of entering our National Portrait Prize, which is quite a prestigious photography award. And it is insanely woke, right? Insanely woke. I actually entered Jordan Peterson in it.
I was about to say you should enter Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, I did. And I got shortlisted. I didn't win, obviously. The person who won was, token DEI, but whatever. Sure. So I want to do a portrait of Pauline Hanson, right, in a way that is provocative and that people haven't considered with her before. And it was so funny because I was running this over in my head, and Topher was kind enough to introduce me to the chief of staff, and they're keen to do a portrait. Great. They haven't heard my idea yet, so they might renege. No. So what I was thinking is there was an article that Pauline referenced in an interview I watched with her today. And I think the interview was with, who was it with? I've watched so much Pauline Hanson stuff today, I can't remember. But she was talking about how the press have covered her over the years. And she made a reference to one in particular where they said, I think it was a Channel 9 reporter or it was a Channel 9 writer that said she needs to be burned at the stake. And I was like, oh my God, that's what I want to do. I want to do a portrait of Pauline.
You want to burn Pauline at the stake? No. Sorry, am I understanding this conversation correctly?
Pauline, no, ignore him.
Segment that we did about people not being allowed into America because, you probably need to pick your words a little more carefully here, Carl.
No, what I want to do, guys, just indulge me. It's an arty-farty prize, right? Like you have to be provocative and arty-farty. But I do have a master's now, right? So I can spin that arty-farty wankery like the best of them. And what I would like to do is a portrait of Pauline as if she were one of the witches being burned at the stake in the Salem witch trials, because that is, I think, how the public view her. Those who don't like her view her as someone who should be, cancelled. She's a racist. She's bigot. It's all the things. And I was like, I'm going to lean into that if Pauline will let me. Pauline, if you see this, please trust me. And I want to take the most beautiful, amazing fashion editorial portrait of Pauline Hanson, entered into the National Portrait Prize. I'm going to fucking win.
So what are the rules? Does it have to be captured in a single frame or can you work with it in post?
Say that again.
I just don't know what the rules for the portrait prize are. Do you have to capture it in a single frame? Like whatever your setup is to make it that kind of burn at the stake kind of idea, does that all have to be physically there for you to photograph or can you composite and layer?
You can definitely no AI at all. It has to be photography and it has to be, you can retouch and color grade, no generative fill. You can composite, but having said that, that is sort of frowned upon. Like if you're a photography purist, but I will literally do the Annie Leibovitz, right? I will, if Pauline thinks this is a cool idea, I will literally build a set. I will fly people in. We'll make it happen. We'll do something absolutely outrageous.
I will help you crowdfund the budget to make that happen. I think that would be awesome. But your pitch to Pauline needs to lead with that quote. She needs the context before she hears the idea.
Our friend is back. He didn't quite unsubscribe. Don't bullshit me, Carly. I'll call you out. Ooh.
Okay.
Oh no, I'm scared.
Cool, bro.
Okay. Have a good day. Guys, what do you think? I'm reading the comments. Guys, am I on the right thing?
I actually love that idea. And I hate to say that because your ego is big enough as it is. I think that's brilliant. And here's the thing. That actually makes it so much harder for them to throw it in the bin. Like if it was just a portrait, that'd be one thing. They could be like, oh no, we didn't like a technique. They'd nitpick and find something for some reason. But actually that narrative and that context, especially in the context of what's happening around Australia right now, that is actually like, honestly, oh, am I going to say this? That's a really good piece of wank. You know how we talk about how it's always about the wank. It's not about the artwork. It's about the thing that's written on the plaque. That's actually a genuinely compelling bit of wank to write on the plaque next to the picture. That is actually really good.
I told you, I can wank like the rest of them.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, everyone.
So, guys, if anyone has a direct line to Pauline, when she gets this proposal from me, make sure you're there to go, nah, trust her. She's onto it. Pauline, we're going to win.
What I will do is you put the brief together. I will have a direct conversation with James Ashby about it so that he's on board and he gets the vision.
He doesn't think I'm being retarded.
And then we will have you have the conversation with Pauline.
All right, done. Well, that was a pretty big show. I think we missed 2 episodes because I was in China. But stay there. I've got to show you what I did. Hang on. Entertain the crowd for 30 seconds.
I've already sung tangent time. They can only hit the mute button so often. It has been a big show, but I just want to say, like, it's really cool that she gets to photograph Queen Pauline. That's nice and all, but that's only one thing. I had 3. Not that I'm competitive. I'm just saying I had 3 things, and she's only got 1, so I win.
No one cares.
What do you got? What do you got?
Are all the beautiful fabrics that I went and sourced from the fabric market for new Topher Field merch. And you geek out over poles, I geek out over fabric. And can I just tell you, I have sourced. Let me find the one.
Sorry. What are we doing? Like IKEA merch? You got to put the t-shirt together yourself. It comes flat packed. Like we're not selling fabrics, Carly.
No. What I'm selling to you is one of the most delicious hoodie fabrics I've ever felt in my life. It is scrumdiddlyumptious. And what's more amazing, Topher doesn't know this yet. I'm doing it live on air, so he has to coalesce. Look at all the fun colors that we can do for hoodies. So it doesn't have to be black. We can have fun, guys. We can make pink and green and yellow. We can do.
This is my wallet. If I just move it close to the microphone, you might be able to hear. That's the sound of my wallet crying because every time we add a color, I have to spend another $10,000 buying a bunch of them to have in stock. I can't afford you, Carly. I don't know how G does it. You're expensive.
He's lucky I earned my own cash. Anyway, that's enough. I'm ready for a cup of tea.
I'm ready for bed. I've got an early start tomorrow on a big day. So peace out, everybody. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. Thank you for your patience over the last week as Carly took a completely undeserved and unearned hiatus from the Oddcast. We will never forgive her. But anyway, moving on. We have to grift. Topherfield.com.
I was about to say.
Get my stuff because apparently I'm now going to have to find tens of thousands of more dollars to stock up on different colors of hoodies because Carly said that the fabric is really nice. So, really hey, everybody, go to Topherfield.com, buy the stuff I've already got so that I can afford to bring in new stuff. Please, I am practically begging you at this point.
So you guys think Topher's grifting for him. Topher's grifting for me.
I have to feed. She doesn't have a crack habit. She has a fabric habit, and I'm the one that has to feed it.
On top of that, guys, if you like the Oddcast, if you like what we do, Topher and I really do want to grow this show, so please share it. We're going to be a little bit more hands on deck doing it. You can support us through Ko-fi. Am I pointing at the right one? God knows.
Yes, you are. Miracles happen. Miracles happen. You needed to spend a week in China. It's because you went to the Northern Hemisphere. Everything flipped.
Everything flipped on me. So Ko-fi is where you can support the Oddcast directly if you like it, if you think what we're doing is good or it's worth your time. As you guys know, this is not meant to be a serious podcast. We don't want to be a news podcast. This is a pub conversation. like you would be having with your mates, and we want you guys to be part of it. So much so you can join our Discord. So if you want to continue the conversation, you want to talk to like-minded people, I am going to be setting up like a little Oddcast Cupids thing. I want you guys to be able to meet your match, and you could have babies so I don't have to have any, because someone accused me in the chat of being pregnant. No.
Okay, so guys, just a little bit of etiquette here. Pregnant people and trans people have the same etiquette rules, which is that it is never polite to ask. Okay? You can wonder, but you keep it to yourself. All right? That's the etiquette. You just don't ask Carly if she's pregnant, and don't ask Carly if she's trans. Okay? Just keep that question behind your teeth.
I mean, jury's out on whether or not I'm trans. You'll never know.
Thankfully. Thank God for small mercies.
But yes, guys, if you want to join the Discord, I have put a new link in our show notes, so you guys can click that. The link to Topher's merch is there. That's it. We'll be back Wednesday night, 7:30. It's live in the comments. It's not a live show. It's live in the comments. I'll be there having a chat. So
yeah. All right. See you guys then. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.